Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll bring our meeting to order. I'm sorry that for the delay. A little bit late here. We had a town board meeting on the small cell phone towers. So we'll get going right now. Once I find the agenda on this here, I'll be all set. Anyone have a, here we go. Thank you. Yeah, here we go. Thanks. Okay, our first matter is a public hearing, and this is the public hearing for La Sala. This is an application for a site development plan approval for accessory apartment, 48 Quaker Bridge Road. Did we open this before? Is this a continuation?
Need a motion.
Okay, is there a motion to open the public hearing on this application?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I don't think we have any changes, right? We just
changes.
looked at it last time rather exhaustively and spent some time with you on it. And any questions at all from board members on the application? Anything, Bob, Sabrina, on this at this point? Okay. Are there any questions or issues or comments from the public on this application? Okay, not seeing any. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we time it?
Might be a record.
Yeah, I think it's under 30 seconds. But I'm not
23
sure.
seconds, maybe?
Okay. Not that we're not thorough. Okay, we have before us a resolution that's been prepared for this application. And any questions, comments, issues with the proposed resolution?
I'm okay, I've reviewed it, I've seen it, I have no.
Okay.
I just had one comment. Last meeting, I was provided the copy of the Westchester County of Health approval for the department. Is what they do is they take the existing one, and they say they have no objection to that service in itself. We did receive it, so I would recommend that item 7, condition 7, can be removed.
Great, okay.
I was gonna give it to you again, but okay. It's fine with me, I didn't wanna make any waves.
Okay. Any other issues, changes
That's all I have.
from anyone? If not, is there a motion to approve the resolution
As amended.
as amended?
So moved, as amended.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Thank you very much.
all right, very good.
Have a great night.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for dropping by.
Yes. We go now to our next item. This is also a public hearing. This is for the Monaco Realty LLC, application for a site development plan amendment, tree removal permit, stormwater pollution prevention plan approval, 13 Station Place. You can go, yeah, sure. And it's bounce back free.
Great,
So we won't get blinded.
great. Ready?
Yep. So if you could outline the changes that you've made since we last saw you,
Yes.
bring us up to speed.
Well, I gained 3 pounds, and then, I think it was at dinner. But then, what I've done here is I've provided, some of the last comments was the burial, direct burial of our light fixtures and direct burial of our pole. And you're saying,
I would need a little bit more detail on the foundation.
it's no foundation, just stick the pole in the ground, cover with
Well, for the
concrete,
lights-
done.
For the lights.
For the lights, same thing, right there.
That's my vote.
But anyway, and then the last thing that you asked for was the truck turning sequences, and I labeled the type of truck that was requested. It's a 30-foot garbage truck, and it's an ASHTO radius diagram for that truck. What we also did the last time is we decided to move some what was land bank parking, so that people across Station Place were not going to be walking across from one parking lot across the street to this parking lot. So we provided some parking very close to a future restaurant. And at the same time, to do that, we then had to relocate some lighting fixtures to cover the new location of the new parking. We have land banked this area of parking and traded it for here. We've taken land banking away from here and put parking there. Future land banking will be here. So what you've seen is a new parking layout with more parking spaces closer to the building and closer to Station Place.
Chuck, will there be any signage that says?
I'm sorry?
We haven't seen anything about signage, but will there be any signage that will say
Well,
something
there's
like
this-
additional parking in the rear or whatever one says?
Say that one more time, please.
If there will be signage that will indicate that there's additional parking in the rear of the building?
No. If you want that, we could put it in, but you could see the parking here from the street, and here's your entrance, you know? The only sign we have is right here, and we could probably add something to that freestanding sign, which is this sign. The little thing,
something.
parking in the back.
Parking in
Yeah,
the
we
back.
could do that.
Well, since we're on this topic of signs, will the sign also say, you said something earlier about, well, we're doing this so you don't park across the street. But is there a sign that says, do not park across the street?
No.
Could there be?
I suppose there could be. Please do not park on
Across the street.
that county land over there, or anywhere near that lady's parking lot, I suppose, yeah.
Well, doesn't have to say all that, just say, please don't park across the street.
It's better to say on that parking lot across the street, no parking for
I think it's
13
probably
Millwood
better for her to
Place.
say.
I don't think she had indicated she did not want to post signage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when she was here. She said she didn't feel she should have to post signage on the property.
Okay.
I think there are signs that you could put right here saying for this use only.
Oh,
or
good. I like
for
that.
Patrons only. I could do that without a problem. That would sort
That would
of,
mollify me.
that would make it work and say,
You would also too, while we're on the topic of signs, you're gonna need signage, specific signage for the handicap parking and the aisleway, so you might as well make a sign chart based on some of the signs that the planning board wanted, and plus based on ADA requirements.
You're going to need them when you do the building permit.
Oh, absolutely, we'll be looking for that for a final, so you might as well put them on the plan and put both types of signs up.
Or have another plan. This one's getting quite busy.
It's,
when we go for building permit, we'll have a site plan that dimensions everything, and we could put all those signs on that.
well, it's up to the planning board if they want to make that a condition of approval, or have a sign be looked at by me prior to
We also have,
permit signing.
we also have this location for the handicap spaces, and,
Yeah.
I mean, you paint that on the blacktop, I suppose people can
Yeah,
notice
but
that.
that should be a sign
So
chart.
it is also important, Chuck, that if there's going to be site plans, my comment number 8, that the planning board has to approve any freestanding signs that are consistent with the Millwood design guidelines.
Actually, I thought it was the architecture review board that approves those
Not
signs.
in areas where the Millwood guidelines prevail. It specifically gives signs.
I think signage is ARB.
It says
It is.
signage, the
Signage
applicant.
and architectural ARB, streetscape and site design planning board, is that the demarcation in the
It
guidelines?
is in the Millwood design guidelines. It specifically speaks to signage for all site-related signage consistent with the Millwood design guidelines. The purview of the Millwood design guides falls within the planning board. The guidelines relate to architectural context, size, materials, color, illumination, and type. And so I had asked for information to be submitted, and to date, no information has been submitted to signage. I think the planning board has the ability to defer signage to the architectural review board through the planning, through his building permit process if you so choose, but the Millwood design guidelines ask for at least you to have eyes on to be consistent with those guidelines.
Is the review board going to look at the signs also as a matter of course?
They do typically as part of the building permit process.
Will they on this one? Because you're saying that actually the authority rests with us. and
They would,
the design
they
guy.
would, yes, as part of the building permit.
They would anyway.
No,
No.
the code in section 60-350, which is the Millwood Center Area Design Plan Overlay District, which references the guidelines, says in section C1E that on applications on which both the planning board and the BAR and the Board of Architectural Review are approving authorities, the planning board is the approving authority for determining compliance with streetscape guidelines and site guidelines, site design guidelines. And the Board of Architectural Review will be the approving authority for determining compliance with the signage guidelines and the architectural guidelines. That doesn't mean that you can't provide input to the ARB on those issues.
I personally, I think I'd leave it up to them. I don't think that, for me anyway, I don't think we need to get involved in that.
Are they talking about tenant signage, or are they talking about handicap signs? You know,
Talking
it
about
seems
site
like there's
signage.
two different groups of signage we're talking about. I can understand the ARB having the final say on the tenant sign that goes over that says Joe's Restaurant, but the signs that...
freestanding sign.
Can I
they've got-
finish? But the signs that deal with handicap parking, I don't see that as an ARB issue.
It's not. These are for the tenant signage. The handicap parking signs, those are regulated by,
MUTC.
And that's what you suggested having on the drawings.
If you'd have a sign table. so-
Sign chart, right?
Yes.
Chart, so you can see the signs you like, we can see the signs we like before it's approved. That's what I would recommend.
Seems reasonable.
So that's
everyone's
our,
on the same page is what it says.
so site signage is our responsibility.
That is correct. And the other ones for handicap are standard MUTCD signs.
Yeah.
Okay.
but he has a freestanding sign
Right.
at the corner
That's right.
that falls under
planning
your
boards.
purview.
That's,
Planning board, right?
Yep.
So you
that would be
need-
your, the planning, that,
That would be planning board.
That's right.
You need to do a sign chart that shows the signs, put it
Yeah.
on the drawings. and-
I've got one of them. I got the freestanding and I got the tenants right there. I'll have to add handicap and add also the little parking for patrons only, yes?
Whatever signage you need on the site itself, just put in that schedule.
Yep.
And also show the location of the handicap signs for the aisle and the parking as well.
Say that, the aisle,
There's a sign required for the aisle.
you're talking about this,
And,
this,
yeah.
that?
There's a specific sign required for the aisle
Is-
and a specific sign required for the space.
Oh, the thing on the paint, yeah.
They have to be striped in accordance with ADA standards as well. And like Sabrina said, I think you might need a second page.
I got some room.
Getting a little tight.
Okay,
Or a
so
bigger
where are we
sheet.
now?
The other issue was sight lines at the front of the building, on the street. And I think I showed you this last time, we had two locations that we would like, well, anyway, if there are two locations possible, one is by law, the DOT, and one is, what if we moved it a little bit further forward, and that would be the second thing. In both cases, sight lines down the road for a 30-mile-an-hour approaching car, their stopping distance, and our sight lines to come out and cross 2 lanes of traffic is 350 feet. And when you draw that line 350 feet down the road, every car, every space would be in the field of vision for cars coming. So
So
we
we'll
really,
take the street parking away.
if they're gone, yeah. I do believe it might be good for drop-off, or somebody's gonna use it for drop-off or something, but not for permanent parking.
So It seems like we're working at cross purposes here. I thought that, not we, but the codes are. I thought that we had, way back when we did the Millwood Design Guidelines, and maybe it's in the guidelines, and this is a long time ago. Maybe it's in the guidelines or not, but I thought that we actually promoted on-street parking. Maybe I'm wrong.
You did.
But you did.
You did?
But, okay, so now that we have it, we have another part of the code, which is, I guess, ASHTO? Is that right?
Well, it's New York
Quite honestly, the approving authority for this is all gonna be the DOT,
DOT.
so no matter what we say.
State road.
So they're gonna go to ASHTO, and if ASHTO addresses this, and they're going to say, I'm sorry, you can't have on-street parking
And
if
the
you're gonna put a
highway
driveway
permit
here.
will be predicated upon that.
So that's because there is a design speed of, do they do that in, because just around, excuse me, around town and in cities, you don't have that sightline provision. You've got curb cuts, you've got people coming in and out of parking lots in urban situations, and those on 30-mile-an-hour roadways, and you don't necessarily have those requirements.
Everything I submit to the state, they pretty much sticklers on that.
Oh, I know they do.
The state is.
I know they do. I'm sure they do. But maybe that's because we aren't,
Requesting or?
no, we aren't, just pick any city, we aren't Yonkers, you know, we aren't an urban environment. They're dealing with it, unless I'm mistaken, more like a suburban environment, where these rules can apply, but where they can't apply, they don't apply.
Well, keep in mind, when this sidewalk was put in, we designed many, many, many years ago, when it went before the state, all of those curb cuts out there were pre-existing. So they can't go back to a pre-existing curb cut and require the sidelines there. So for some reason, they approved it back then in like 1996, 97, when I designed that back then, and they had all the parking. But keep in mind, this is a new commercial facility, and because of that reason, they'll be looking at the sightlines based on the new regs.
And they also look at the kind of road that it is. It's a state road, not a county road or a back road by any
Well,
means.
because that means they have authority to do it. I mean,
And it's
that's
based on how much
obvious.
volume that road gets, and if it's highly traveled,
Yeah.
they'll pretty much stick to the guidelines.
So there goes our on-street parking.
Yes.
So what are we gonna do with that land? Honestly. what
Uber
is it?
drop-off.
Is drop-off?
It's Uber drop-off. That's all it
Yeah,
can be.
it could.
I don't know if you're gonna get a lot of Uber traffic there.
That's it.
No, not
Or
necessarily.
somebody dropping off.
Why not reclaim it for landscape, for parkway? I mean, just move the curb out. That might be the best thing to do.
But then aren't you going into state
You're in the
property?
state
State
right
right away.
away.
You can do that,
But
that's
we-
a good point, but you know what, if that's what you want,
We
they
went
might
into the
wanna
state
put it on
right
the
away
plans.
to make the parking to begin with, right? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but somebody said state, we can't do it. We can do it because we put the parking there to begin with and they approved it.
No, I think that's a good idea. I mean, if they move that curb line out to where it used to be, you can put grass there, plantings and trees, provided it doesn't.
Otherwise, it's
Sidelines.
just
Why not put
useless
the
asphalt.
sidewalk in front there?
Well, you can move the sidewalk also.
Yeah, you can do a lot of things with it, but I mean,
So
like you
that's
said.
not on you. That's on the town, I think,
Well,
to do it. Well, maybe it is on you.
No, I mean, honestly, if there is no way to possibly get on-street parking there now, because we're going to the state for a new curb line, is there a better use for the area?
absolutely, and that's a very good point.
Well,
So,
the guidelines might take that on.
The guidelines can't take that on. Not unless we're redoing the guidelines.
we don't need the guidelines to
No,
take that on. We can
in
take
other
that
words,
on.
using the guidelines as the goal or the context, you can make requests to implement.
Yeah, I think
Streetscape.
the state's probably gonna say, your guidelines mean nothing to us. I think it's just a matter of the town board or whoever goes to the state, and maybe it's Bob, goes to the state and says, hey, we just want to reclaim this land for sidewalk benches, you know, whatever, landscape. And I would think they would say it's fine with us, it's less, for the town, it's easier to clear the snow. I mean, it's a better deal all around, I would think. Now, somebody's got to pay for that, but it seems to me worthwhile.
Yeah, but I agree with you when you said that the state is going to say, those are guidelines, we have regulations. And so, sorry, Trump. Yeah.
They love this situation right now.
Oh, right.
With the extra. one.
Yes,
So there's a good chance he would say no anyway.
yeah.
But they love the extra,
It's gonna be just
extra width
asphalt
for
for
the
no
lane.
reason.
It's almost like a
You can't
shoulder.
park there.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I agree
It'll be
with,
striped.
I agree with the thought to have a drop-off point right at the end there where that car, there's like a car that's buried under the stripes here.
Yeah, right there. I tried to squeeze one in. Yeah.
car will be on page 2 also, right?
So I think that's the best thing to do in the interim, and the other stuff can be done down the road.
I mean,
But I
Chuck,
wouldn't
if-
hold this application up for it.
Chuck, if you move your car back from the edge of the travel lane,
That,
doesn't that pick up at least a couple of spots?
what,
going
no, this is
south?
DOT. This is what we would like.
What did you go back, 14.5?
Yeah. In reality, people are gonna come right out to that line
Yeah.
and look.
That's right.
And you could probably get away with 2 cars.
So let me
Which is,
ask,
to Tom's point, that's what happens in urban areas
so let me ask,
all day long.
They don't have to do that in New York, though, because
They
the
don't
average
stop.
MP an hour, miles per hour is at 7. No sight lines.
long way. Bob? Bob, excuse me. Do you think that, I mean, zebra striping is shown in those locations where the on-street parking is. Would that have to be done if, once the project's done, would the state require us to zebra stripe all that?
Depends.
I mean, that's
I
a,
can't answer that question. They might.
Is there
It's not gonna be used for parking. And
If
if
If they see it on the
Yeah.
drawings, they will.
Excuse me?
If they see it on the drawings, they'll ask for it.
Right, I mean, I would, you know.
Right? If it wasn't on the drawing,
Try
they
and
may
put
not
parking
think
there.
about
we'll
it.
See
have a
what
bunch
the
of no
state
parking
says.
signs, it's a nightmare.
I mean, you can try that,
Let's put
Chuck.
it
I
on there,
mean,
see
you know,
what
the
they-
state is, they go back and forth on the distances behind the travel lane. I've seen sometimes approved at 10, some 14, something 16. That's gonna be predicated on how much traffic they perceive on that road. And they have all the counts on these roads. So based on the traffic volume and the annual average daily traffic, that's where they dictate how far back you have to come for the sightlines. Again, they're the, the approving agency. Chuck can put on whatever he wants, but they're gonna come back and dictate to him what the distance is from the edge of the travel lane. They did the same
No,
thing
I
with
know.
us up on Center Street.
I understand that totally. I'm just looking at, and we aren't going to decide this because it's a town board action to do public works, but I wonder if there could be a recommendation from the planning board to the town board that says that we're going to have a condition out here that the town board ought to authorize somebody to approach. Maybe somebody can make a phone call, not you, but one of our politicians here can make a phone call to somebody in Albany and say, you know, this is something we need to do for our community. But I think that if we don't take the initiative, then I don't think you're right, it's not going to happen.
Well, can we use this as a test case? You know, Chuck, if you can take away the striping and put some parking in there, given where we think that your sightlines are going to start. You know, let's put the parking in there, and then when you submit it to the state, let them say no, and then we can have a rational conversation based on the denial of
Yeah.
your plan to stimulate what you're speaking of,
That's,
Tom.
the process sounds good to me.
Yeah, so Chuck, then we ask you to redo this.
De-stripe it and put the parking spaces. in.
Correct.
Yep.
What about the stripes? Get rid of them?
Get rid of
The
them.
zebra stripes.
You need to be sure.
I would get rid of the.
No matter what, I would say.
I'm curious, though, what is this going to result in delaying the project going forward?
He still has to go to the state.
Yeah, he has to go to the state, we'll approve it, but
Yeah, I mean, we can,
Subject to the
the
state's,
board would
approval.
approve it contingent upon the state approving.
Yeah, the condition would be that the applicant has to seek approval from DOT, not that they obtain approval from DOT, because we can't guarantee that that's going to happen unless it's an element of the site plan that's, you know, really material to whether you're going to approve or deny this application.
Oh, they would need it before they get a BP,
Yeah, right.
not
But-
before you sign.
What I'm saying is the condition would be that,
Yep.
that the applicant seek it, not obtain it in this instance.
I've seen some instances, Chuck, and, take this whatever way you want. There's sometimes you come back 10 feet from the traffic lane. Try that, you might pick up some spots.
Like, I can't say it again.
Come back 10 feet from the travel lane, which is the fog line. And then show those,
Yeah.
say, triangles going in, like you said, take out the zebra striping.
Michael
Show a
has
couple
all the
of-
triangles
and show a
at the
couple of
worst.
parks, and show a couple of cars. So at least if we squeeze 2 cars out of it.
Please
it's
don't
better
show
than
any
losing
zebra
all the
striping.
cars.
yeah, no matter what.
Yeah, just don't put zebra striping
Right,
on
no.
the drawing.
I don't know what Michael's opinion of it is, you designed it.
What? Michael has a
I've seen
DOT
some-
requirement. This is an illustration. Michael has the actual triangles.
Yeah, I know the state is gonna want those. They're gonna wanna be able to see clearly down the road.
Mike, can you
And I
follow?
don't know if I wanna pull the sidewalk
Can you
over.
come up to the
that they're
microphone,
not gonna
Michael?
turn
I'm
in that,
sorry.
put a
Give
shelf
him the
over there.
Just
microphone.
the microphone.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm just worried that they might ask us to put a shelf over there instead of just moving the sidewalk out. Okay, they might say, no, hold sidewalk where it is, now put a shelf for the snow collection out to the road.
What's a shelf?
A snow shelf.
What's a snow shelf?
More or less a place
Extended
to dump the snow.
Not lawn.
Yeah, it's usually a brick, or, instead of the little brick patch that we put there, they go a little farther. They make it just about as wide as the sidewalk, about 5 feet.
Well, maybe we can go to the state and meet with you.
Together.
And
I think
support
that's-
you.
Thank you.
How about that?
It's all, yeah,
Yeah.
part of it is in how you ask the question. I mean, you ask it the wrong way, you're asking for a no, so.
We would love nothing more than to make our streets a little more pedestrian friendly, more, not so
Right. You know,
car oriented.
right.
Well, to conform to our guidelines.
Well, exactly,
How about
and
that?
so Chuck, I'm happy to go with you and have a nice conversation with the
comprehensive
state.
That'll be fun.
Yes,
Not a
That
problem.
conforms to our
yes,
comprehensive
you
plan.
can.
Not a
But you
problem.
can't contradict me.
Sabrina, in public. It's just in public.
Depends if it's life safety.
Quiet.
But I,
You know how it
Well,
works.
that's
You
right.
know how it works.
Just be sure you cite the comprehensive plan,
Yes,
because that might help. That's a legislative thing, right?
yes.
Thanks.
Okay.
So are your
Sabrina, you-
guidelines, by the way.
But you had some issues that you want to run through with Chuck, so we have.
Well, I wanted to go through my memo, just to
Yep.
make sure that the planning board has the
Right.
information it needs. Chuck, do you wanna review the ARB and the changes they made to the architectural detailing?
All right.
I think that that's important for the board to hear, and I'm gonna keep talking while you look for that. We just discussed the on-street parking issue. The sidewalks and curbs, the ADA compliant, curb cut, street trees, lighting, no taller than 15 feet. Sidewalk fronting the property, all of that information needs to be provided. Off-street parking lots, the layout, go through the architecturals and we go back to the plan and talk about your parking lot and your landscape island layout.
Oh, all right.
Okay, but let's go through the architectural.
This is what we've come up with as approved by the ARB.
As referred and recommended.
Referred and back here. We have a connector that connects the two existing buildings. And the connector has a pitched roof over the second floor. And on the first floor, we have a covered walkway that leads from the sidewalks into the store. This is a store, this is a restaurant. But we have entranceways at this covered walkway, both for the main, I could show you a plan, but this is, whatever happens on this side happens on that side. So I go in this door to that store, or I go in this door back here to a hallway that leads upstairs to the offices upstairs. And this is the main upstairs hallway that has all of the bathrooms and stairway and all of the utilities in it. This existing foundation, this is a porch that we're enclosing, and that will be a display for the retail stores. And this will be, if there's a restaurant here, this will be eating area. We've discussed with the ARB to have windows that operate on either side with a picture window in the middle. These windows will have muntins, maybe 6 over or 8 over 8, with a clear bottom. So they wanted a little more texture in the window area. And we're coming back to them at building permit time, and we'll be discussing those details with them at that point.
So Chuck, I think this is a huge leap forward.
Yeah,
I mean,
developed.
We've been around and around
Fully
on this one.
developed, yeah, I know.
And it's much better than my idea of how to make that link. So I applaud you and the board getting together and making this much better. Can I ask you a question about the muntins? Would they be on the upper windows also?
Yeah.
Second story windows?
And what I use is the authentic divided glass with an energy panel on the outside, so it doesn't look like somebody stuck some tape on the window. So there's also shadow lines and texture at that point also.
Excellent.
And then what we did, just look at one more for you. This is the roof plan, and here's the front sidewalk This is the patio out in the back, and this is the rear entrance. What we have is our utilities, our condensers and our generator and all that other stuff up on the roof, so it's not in any way, shape, or form on ground where the people are and where the landscaping is.
So the slope roof is on the back also?
Yes.
Which is great. And it looks like it's not parapet, it's actually just a long cricket, is it?
That's the gutter.
Right. But it slopes down also on
Oh,
the
yeah, it
backside?
slopes down. Yeah, it's not, the reason it does that is because,
It's okay, I think it's fine.
yeah, the second floor has two little corridors connecting.
Uh-huh.
And that roof covers those corridors, and it's a cathedral in each,
Oh, nice.
so it has some meaning.
Yeah.
And so that's what that is.
Is there a handicapped bathroom on the first floor?
Yeah. And that is,
What paint color were they talking about? They didn't like your brown?
well, actually, believe it or not, the Miller Design Guidelines talks about browns and beiges, and they were thinking something different than that. But we're going to be working on color, and lighter browns or maybe more earth tones rather than
Okay.
whites and blues. Not sure where it's going, but we'll work that out as we go along. And there's the handicap bathroom on that first floor. Here's the handicap ramp.
So does the ARB, are they looking for a response from us?
No, it's just a referral to us, right?
No, you referred the plans to them, they responded to your referral, Chuck met with them several times to bring it back to you. Moving forward,
Can I just ask Chuck, the upstairs are offices, right?
Yes?
And you don't have to provide access upstairs with an elevator?
No, it's less than 3,000 square
Okay,
feet.
just checking.
Yeah.
the sidewalk condition, Chuck, I know last time that we discussed the sidewalk in the front, there wasn't any information about the existing condition. Were you looking to repair it where it needed to be repaired, so on and so forth?
No, the existing condition is as is, and it doesn't need repair. It's-
Okay, can
everything-
you submit
everything's fine.
documentation to the board
Just say the
To-
sidewalk is fine.
that characterizes the sidewalk out there, making sure it is in good condition?
Yeah, I hope. It's in good condition. There is one issue, though. Right here, this was a driveway for this house, and there's a curb cut right there. And I don't know if you want that curb cut left in there or...
If it's
filled
no
in.
longer going to be a driveway, it should,
Yeah.
State's gonna have you take it out anyway.
Oh, yes?
Curb cut doesn't go to a driveway.
Oh, all right. Well, I wasn't
Doesn't
sure.
make any sense.
It's a
so
great...
we look
it's a-
for that sidewalk to be improved.
Okay.
So the sidewalk condition should indicate that you're
Indicate
gonna-
curb cut removed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, so,
About the land
let's go to the
bank.
planting islands. Chuck, do you wanna talk about the
Okay.
landscape islands,
Yes.
that are required via the number of parking spaces, as well as your land banking, and what you're going to do with the vegetation if the land banked parking needs to be
Okay.
realized?
This note right here says that all planting that is in the land bank area will be removed when we convert to parking. All of the planting that we've selected in the land bank area here and here are movable. They're bushes, they're not trees. What we've done is we've added plantings along this north property line. As when we added these extra parking spaces. Back here, we land banked these 4 spaces, but when they become active spaces, what's left over is an island right here. And we have a light fixture at the back of that island, but this island, it'll be an island in this row of parking. So we have 4 spaces on this side, we have 7 spaces on that side. We get within the 7 to 10 spaces. When we added these spaces from land banking, we end up with 10 spaces. We ended up with 10 spaces, which does not need an island, 7 to 10. It starts with an island and it ends with a big buffer area. If we added these two spaces to land banking when it would be required, then we would have this area to be the buffer between the street and the parking lot. And I'm keeping it on the north side as much as possible. I did not want to put cars here now, because as we're driving by, you could look back, and there's no parking here, and there's no parking here. It's almost like you almost need a sign that says, hey, there's parking back there, it's not the aqueduct, which is that. So
You're not proposing another sign, are you?
That'll be on page
Yeah.
2 next time.
That's what I'm getting at. Anyway, long story, it's a nice open view all the way back to a lot of grass, a lot of trees, a lot of bushes.
That's great.
And where will you relocate them to?
I won't relocate them if in fact, this board,
If you have to take back the lab bank
Yeah.
and make parking spaces, and you're
Right
gonna dig
there.
up the plants, where are they all gonna go?
the plants, we just move them over to this area.
And does that satisfy the
Yeah.
requirements?
Yeah.
That's not,
No, you need to put a landscaped island in there.
Well,
Isn't
there
that
it is. That stays landscaped right now.
Right, and then the other plants you're putting elsewhere?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Monaco,
Okay.
this is almost a nursery in itself with all this planting. He helped design all of this stuff.
So let me continue.
Yeah.
Internal linkages, the planning board just has to acknowledge and waive this requirement from the Millwood guidelines. You've discussed this with the applicant.
Yeah.
We addressed my item number 6, the land bank parking. The applicant, number 7, site lighting, the applicant communicated that they were converting the lighting. They provided specs on that. The planning board will need to approve that as part of the approval. We already discussed signage. And then, there were comments regarding visual principles, the roof line, siding, paint, all of that. Chuck, did you discuss that with the ARB, the siding, paint colors?
Yes.
Okay. Do you
Yeah.
want to share with the planning board what your discussion was?
I did. Oh, well, the colors of the Millwood area design guidelines are browns and beiges. Definitely not white stucco. And it's horizontal siding. It's that hardy plank siding, and the roofing is the asphalt, typical asphalt.
And then the changes that I requested to the zoning conformance table were addressed.
Yep, okay. Good. And you've addressed Bob's comments, right? Yep.
I have Michael to cover Bob's comments.
Okay.
oh, we're, I have it, I'm fine.
You want to put it on there so I can see it? No?
Not really, it's in, I gotta pull all this stuff out and figure it all out. But we have taken care of all the comments that you needed at this particular time, correct?
almost.
Chuck, don't leave with my
So there's some items that we're going to put on the resolution.
Almost. I'm in a good mood tonight. I'll let you put it on the resolution.
Yeah,
It's
thank
about
you.
one L apart, almost versus all.
Thank you, Chuck.
Now, basically, before Michael speaks, these are items that were been in my 2 previous
Right.
memos. However, in light of that, I would recommend that they can be incorporated into the planning board resolution of
Right,
conditions,
as conditions, yeah.
just to make it simple.
Yep,
Great.
Okay, and
that's okay, right?
Fine with me.
And you're okay with
Please.
anything but to come here again?
Yeah. Let's get it done.
what about the lighting? Now, the lighting hasn't been resolved yet, or something, because it's in accordance with one code, but not with our desire to
Kelvin was a
have
little bit
it.
higher, I think, than we
Yeah.
normally look at. I think it's 3,000, right? And we're looking between 2,500 and 2,700? Or is it 2,700 you were proposing?
No, I'm
No.
proposing 3,000. It's 2,800 is everywhere in town. And you said this board likes 2,500.
Right.
And I'm at 3,000. And 3,000 is an incandescent color.
How do we get you to 2,700?
Well,
Do 2750, maybe that'll make them feel better.
I would, you pick a different light fixture.
Yep.
And after talking to the engineers and the suppliers and on and on and on, the difference between 2,800 and 3,000 is still a daylight. It's still It's still incandescent in color, and I'm wondering why we have to, well, this was 1991 that they wrote this code, or 99, the one that was updated. It's different. My people say that it's even hard to find 2,500 bulbs these days. So, I'm saying that, and I have a picture of what daylight looks like, yeah?
Okay, you're going to show us the fixture, not the lamp, right? The gooseneck fixture is.
Yeah, the fixture, the fixture is, I'll show you the fixture.
Right, and so the fixture, is it that the fixture is driving the
Yes.
Kelvin on the bulb?
Yeah, the design of the fixture, the look of the fixture.
Is driving the Kelvin on the bulb?
Yes,
It doesn't
So-
accommodate 2,500 bulbs.
that's the lowest that I can get. But
So,
they
okay,
also-
so,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think we've got the tail wagging the dog here. What we care about most is the heat of the lamp, right, the Kelvin.
Yeah.
So we, I think, always sort of wanted to go to 2,500. I don't know what our recent history is. We haven't necessarily been able to get it every time.
I think it's been very close to 2,500
Yes, it
across the board.
has.
Okay,
Yes.
then,
Well, here's
then
25.
you need to pick another fixture.
Well, I'd like to disagree or request that you take a consideration. This is 2,500 to 3,000 right there,
Which way?
the one on the left. It's
Is-
considered warm, warm whites. And it's pretty well standard of the
So-
industry.
So when we came up with these standards, if you want to call them that, and we ended up at 2,500, we had presentations by lighting engineers who came in and showed us all of the bulbs and showed us the difference between these.
1999.
No,
No,
we did it with
the
Chapel Crossing,
Chapel Crossing.
like
yeah.
in 2015,
Okay. And what is Chapel Crossing?
2,500.
25?
yes.
And
So pictures like this may be informative to some, but the pictures actually don't do it. What does it is actually seeing the bulb itself. You can't trust a photograph or something like this.
yeah.
So we've been through this, and I don't think that, for me anyway, I don't think there's any reason to change our standards just because you prefer another light fixture. I think that lamp needs to be the first thing that you address, and then pick a fixture that you're comfortable with.
Well, I usually start at the end and work backwards, not that way.
But you can't get backwards in this
But
case.
the range between 2,500 to 3,000 is minor, according to the engineering.
We hear you, but I just said we've been through this,
Yeah,
and we've decided that it's not minor.
yeah.
Oh, and the three that you put up there, two were the same and one was different. So you're saying the 3,000 one was the white one and the other two were the warm yellowish ones?
It varies. I mean, it goes all the way to daylight and then.
Oh, the picture that you had up before.
But
Let's daylight.
it's a debate that we really don't have to have, that this is our requirement. And unless you can demonstrate that there is not a lamp available of any design.
Oh, no,
2,500.
I mean, I can't do that. But to answer your question, the one on the left is, what does it say? It's 2,700 to 3,000.
To 3,000.
And my engineers are telling me that you can hardly find a 2,500, and I don't know.
For
if
your
that would be-
fixture.
No, he does all kinds of fixtures, but the question is, what did they use at Chapel Crossing?
I believe it was 2,500.
I believe
Yes,
so.
it was.
I wonder if it is, though, even though it was.
Well, we've done that, I mean,
And every light in our street, every light on
Signing off on that,
Station
right?
Place, every light on
no,
Quaker,
no,
is 28.
No, the town has got different standards for streetscape ones, but for parking lots and facilities, private facilities, and we've been doing this now for some time now, where we've been doing
Well, I'll have to
2,500.
look for,
Because it really would be inconsistent with what we've been doing.
yeah.
So we really have been doing that, and fairly consistently. I mean, I think absolutely
I
consistently.
would like to, do we have documentation, photometrics of, well, I will,
We have a submittal from Chapel Crossing folks.
But lots of others that we've looked at.
I'd like to look at the others.
Yeah,
Great.
And if they are 25, then we'll just have to do 20.
yeah.
Okay.
But I think that, I mean, I don't think there've been any exceptions on that, where we've had lighting.
I think a few times, maybe 27.
Yeah.
Yeah?
That's about it.
And the only other issue is when it was something that was pre-existing, we just had that apartment building last week, and we
Yes.
determined it wasn't shining out, so it was pre-existing, we just left it. We're changing it.
2,700, I believe.
Yeah,
Okay.
The difference between 2,700 and 3 is,
Means a lot to us. That's all you need to know. Seriously.
can you determine it, is the question, I don't know.
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Not with you, what you have there, but with other stuff that we've seen a difference.
Honestly, this is a debate we don't have to have. It's getting late.
Yep.
You just have to accept that this is the planning board's history on this subject,
Yeah.
and we got educated on this subject.
Can we make it a condition of the?
Please, I'll work very hard with
Yeah,
Leave it
the
up to the
sidewalk
town
and the
engineer
lights.
and-
I agree.
and,
Yeah,
Okay.
excellent.
Good idea.
Okay. Are we, where are we now?
So, we're in a public hearing. It sounds like the information that is going to be forthcoming from the applicant is nothing new that you haven't already discussed. It's following up on comments that have been discussed, before the board. So I think you may be in a position to close the public hearing and direct preparation of the resolution.
Well, I don't know if we're ready for the resolution yet unless we have this information. But we can certainly close the public hearing and then leave it to the applicant to get the information. Does that seem fair?
Well, what do you think, Chuck, based on what we've asked for tonight? How quickly do you think you can get revised plans that reflect the discussion tonight?
Tomorrow. Oh, no, the lighting. Have to change
See, it was that easy, see?
It's parking and a couple of signs. No,
Signing,
it's
right.
reasonably quick.
So, so I don't see why we couldn't do a draft resolution as long as there's enough time for us to get that done
Yeah.
with the other things that are looming.
Yes, exactly.
And give him enough time to take his time and provide the correct information. And not squeeze it on one plan.
Right, so that might be
I could-
maybe June
What's the date?
18th? Would
June
that be-
19th.
June 19th, because it's a tax day.
Wednesday.
Okay. So we can perhaps we can close the public hearing and then schedule the drafting of the resolution for tentatively adopting it for 6/19, if we have everything back from you.
By the regular submission deadline,
What's that date?
May 28th.
May 28th? That's a
It's a week.
Yeah, 1 week.
Yeah.
Can you do it in a week, Chuck?
Yeah.
Okay.
As a
Great.
matter of fact,
Okay.
Michael has all of his drawings. We could add some of these notes to his site
Yes,
plan.
you can. Can you guys coordinate in a week?
I know Chuck can do it in a week. He's a race car driver. That's right, it's true.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
He goes fast.
All right.
He goes a lot
Good.
faster.
Game
than
on.
the rest of us.
Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And is there a motion to direct staff to
Do we
draft?
ask for public comment?
We could.
Is there any public comment?
Sure, Jolene.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to reclose it? Or reopen it?
Okay. So moved.
Whatever you're moving is fine, but. Okay, we want to direct staff to draw up a resolution for the June
Yep.
19th, was it?
Yes.
June 19th meeting?
On
The Wednesday.
19th, yeah.
19th, yeah, that's a Wednesday. Yeah, tax day is on a Tuesday.
You get kicked out of the room on that.
Do we have a motion to,
So moved.
second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thanks, Chuck.
thank you.
Okay.
We're gonna miss you, Chuck.
Yeah.
He'll be back.
Okay, we'll move down to our next matter, and this is an informal hearing for a pending application, Berghoff, Becker, Barocci-Durst. This is an application for a re-subdivision lot line amendment, site development plan, steep slopes permit, tree removal permit, wetlands permit, and stormwater pollution prevention plan approval, 24 and 14 Trails End.
Good evening, Jerry Tortorella, Hockerman, Tortorella, and Wexstein, and with me this evening are Paul Sysak and Nick Capola from JMC. Mr. Berghoff wasn't able to join us tonight. He's had a business commitment out of town, but, and this was rescheduled. We had anticipated we'd be on for May 7th, so he apologizes for not being here tonight. We did make a submission, JMC made a submission, which contained revised plans, including, revised JMC plans and as well as revised lot line adjustment plans and a revised stormwater management plan in connection with some of the stormwater improvements that we're proposing. They also provided a comment-by-comment response letter so that you would see how we had addressed various of the comments that had been made by the various consultants. I want to address two things before I turn the floor over to Paul so that he could talk to you about some of the specifics. Two things that you may have thought about in the course of reviewing the materials. One was, we had a discussion last time in February when we were here about putting together a summary of the history of the improvements. We had addressed that. And we did try to do that, but what we ended up finding was the only thing we were going to be able to do would be to regurgitate to you what your various materials in the town's files showed, and then tell you how either professionals didn't accurately calculate numbers or how reviews were not done consistent with what we think the town's practices were. And since we weren't trying to say that we were, and taking the tack that we were saying, oh, you had given us approvals for all of these various things because they existed, that didn't seem to me to be a productive approach. I mean, we have undertaken to identify that we have excess development coverage, excess building coverage, that one of the ways that we're looking to rectify that would be to acquire additional land in order to have the numerical requirement of the zoning ordinance met in that instance. And so that's why we didn't undertake that exercise. The second thing is that if we can we shift to MP1? This is the mitigation plan, the clearing and grading limit line mitigation plan in the green hatched area. That seemed to create an awful lot of confusion and consternation last time around, and we never intended it for it to be. It's that dark green area that's hatched on the Durst property. We had talked about, there was some confusion and it didn't make sense to you why that was suggested to be restricted. So we didn't make any changes to this aspect of the plan, not because we don't want to have a conversation about it, but because there isn't, we're willing to talk to the board and see what the board wants us to do with respect to that area. The Berghoff's plan is to use the Durst property for passive recreational purposes. And we'd like some feedback from you. If you want us to mark restrictions in certain areas, what would make you comfortable with respect to a designation on that? And then we can make a revision, rather than guessing what might work for you and then having to come back and do that multiple times.
What's the definition of that?
In our view, I mean, there is no term of art definition, but in our view, it's being able to have walking, be able to walk and have like trails, but not improved trails. I mean, we're not talking about clearing trails and putting down fill or anything like that. We're just talking about being able to use it for that purpose.
Walking, no bicycles.
Walking, contemplation, no bicycles.
Mountain bikes or anything like that.
Walking in the woods.
Just
Yeah.
walking in the woods.
Yeah, well, I mean, in areas of contemplation, I mean, when you're out at the site, you saw that we had the island, in the middle of the pond, and then they actually do canoe over to that island, and they have a seating area there. I mean, they really do use the site that way. You saw all the different walking paths that were placed down on the site in order to get from place to place, because they really have constructed the improvements, I think essentially working with the grade of the property. I mean, there are some instances where we've been involved with sites where you've got elevation changes and you cut from one place and fill. I don't think that's what you see here. I mean, this wasn't an effort to take a mountain and turn it into a plain. I mean, they really do have an undulating topography on that site, and I think they've tried to work as much as possible with that in the improvements that they've put and installed on the site historically. So we're happy to give further clarification. We're happy to receive comments about what you think is suitable and appropriate in the area. In the future, I mean, should the Berghoffs or somebody else who owns the property in the future acquire additional land and have the capacity, the capability to do something on that additional land that would be approved by the board, I mean, we'd hate to have a restriction where we could never come back and talk to the board about doing something if we can show that we can do it in a suitable manner and obtain the requisite approvals for it. So that's why we didn't make it completely restricted in the first instance. So if I can, I'll turn the floor over to Paul, and he can just briefly summarize for you some of the things that we've done, and then we can talk about any questions that you have.
So to go back to the dark green, there's just really nothing really special about the dark green, so if it became light green like everything else, it wouldn't matter.
That's right. The evolution of it was when we met with staff, because we had some intrusions into the clearing and grading limit line from the original subdivision approval, staff suggested that we offer some sort of mitigation. So that's how we came up with it. It really wasn't any great.
Think that would be the
rhyme
mission?
Not one of your better efforts.
Yeah.
I
That's
must
the
say.
broadest possible interpretation of the,
Okay.
And I'm not suggesting that staff, it's not that, I'm not suggesting that staff said do that as the mitigation.
Take away
No,
the
we
green
did not
pencil.
say that.
this
They
wasn't.
did not.
You say
That-
this wasn't your idea?
So this was
We-
somebody's
we-
new.
We are not claiming this is our idea. Some
No.
things, yes, this one, no.
No, the idea was that to think about some sort of mitigation, to be able to address it with the board, to kind of offer as a gesture, because there were those intrusions, and that's what we came up with, so.
Well, you confused this very slow member of the board, by the way, with dark green, so.
We didn't intend it to take on a life
Taking
of
a
its
month and a
own.
half for me to get through this.
On the gesture, how did you guys determine the square footage of the dark green area? Was that a calculation done by something, or did you just close your eyes and pick a number?
No, we were able to calculate the difference between the approved clearing and grading limit line and the adjustment that we're proposing.
Okay.
Okay, and so it's the extent to which we went beyond where we were supposed to in the clearing and grading limit line, and that turned out to be 0.38 acres, and so that's,
And put it in a
The
place where it
mitigation
has
area.
absolutely no purpose or use.
Right.
So, so I guess maybe I'm jumping ahead, but you've decided to abandon that as a mitigation of encroachment. How do you, so what's your current plan for mitigation?
well, that's the dialogue that we want to have with the
Good,
board
let's
this
do it.
evening. You know, we want to have a conversation about that. I mean, we're not proposing to remove stepping stones or things of that nature. We'd like not to do that. We'd like to see if there's something that you want us to, some way you want us to describe that area, some limitation you want us to agree to with
Which
respect to
area?
the Durst property or the other sections of the Berghoff property.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, I just want to be clear.
No, I understand.
So you're not suggesting that the mitigation that you will be proposing, because it's your proposal, your application, you're not suggesting that you only anticipate that mitigation on the Durst property. You're suggesting that mitigation could also happen on the remainder, the existing parcel.
Yes, under certain circumstances. I mean, I'm not defining what it
Okay,
is,
so
but
let's
I'm
hear
not
that.
proposing,
Okay, got it.
well, to reiterate, I'm not proposing that we remove improvements.
I heard that.
Yeah,
So I wanna-
so if you have, I don't have another idea right now of what we would do on that site that might be acceptable to the board. If there are some thoughts about what you'd like to see us do, I mean, we
Okay,
are
so you're s-
proposing mitigation.
But you did propose
Yeah,
those,
so
and the
let's-
ERB looked at those.
But that's for the wetland
Oh,
permit.
the wetland.
That was for the wetland
Oh,
permit.
okay.
So if you want us to link the wetland permit mitigation and think about expanding certain aspects of that, we
Got it.
could talk about doing
So,
that.
so this is then an open subject.
It is an open subject. Look,
Pursuant to what you are willing to do.
yes, I mean, I don't know what we're willing to do without speaking to our client about it in detail. I don't mean to frustrate you by
No, I
saying that.
know, sorry, go ahead.
But we are open to any thoughts you have about additional mitigation that you would like to see us employ.
Understood. My frustration is I just want to get on with it.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about the wetlands now, the wetland mitigation, the plans for that. You're going to make a presentation?
Yes, you had asked us at the site walk to speak to the ERB about the mitigation plan. So Paul can address that and any other modifications to the stormwater plan, things of that nature.
Thank you.
Evening, Chairman, members of the board, Paul Sysak from JMC. I'd just like to touch on two things. Since our first planning board meeting, we had the opportunity to have a well-attended site walk at the property on March 16th, Saturday morning. And we had staked out the wetland limit, the associated 100-foot buffer, the originally approved clearing and grading limit line, and the proposed amended clearing and grading limit line. And we've started up on the beginning of the driveway, and we saw an area that we had proposed some stormwater mitigation. So the in 2007, your town adopted the stormwater management chapter. So from that point in time, we did our best to figure out what improvements were on the site from 2007 when the adoption started to what is on the site now. So we backed into a plus square footage number that we were able to mitigate. So we were detaining the additional impervious area that would have not been required before 2007. So the complete increase in impervious area from 2007 till now will be treated in an on-site stormwater infiltration system, which has been tested, and that was what the backhoe marks were there for. We took a look at the pool, and I think most of our focus was down by the existing pond, and
I'm sorry, it would be helpful if you had a graphic. that
yes,
just showed-
I'm going to move the, yeah.
We don't need the Durst property on this for this part of the conversation.
No problem.
And did you use aerial photography to augment your decision-making on what was pre or post 2007?
Yeah, it was a mixture of some aerials and some record site plan information, GIS. It was trying to put everything together that we can get our hands on. That's not working. So during the site walk, there was some discussion. To the top of the screen is the existing pond, and the wetland flags are shown there. We decided to take advantage of a small wetland pocket that is right here, where all the stormwater that would run off would come down and gather here, and then go this way into the inlet to the pond there. So there was some talk about having a lineal planting along here, but the second thing that I want to touch on is that we were last month before the ERB, and we presented this plan, and we brought up the concerns of the board that were discussed during the site walk, and it was decided that a bigger grouping clumped together would have a better chance of survival and having a long-term ecological benefit,
Right.
instead of being weed whacked by accident, something along
Then a thinner,
Exactly.
narrower, linear area around the entire
Correct,
pond.
yes. And, so this 300 square feet is basically a net increase of a previous wetland permit that was issued compared to now, and some things that weren't put in as part of that approval. And we backed into a 300 square foot net of increased impervious area that was within the wetland buffer. So that's how we landed on that one-to-one mitigation. So we will have a 3-year monitoring and maintenance plan as part of the plantings to ensure that they have a survival.
Is that standard 3-year for wetland mitigation and plantings?
You've been talking about.
It's 5?
Wetlands mitigation, from what I recall, 5.
5, right?
5 and
Usually the
it's.
standard.
Yeah, whatever was written in the recommendation letter, we had spoken about it at the ERB.
I think we normally look at least 5.
Okay.
Yeah, minimum 5.
Right.
You
Bad ones have
discussed
been 10.
10.
For the trees, it's
Yeah.
10. Some wetlands mitigation has been 10, based
Okay,
on what you
so we'll have to refer to the
Right.
letter from the ERB.
Yeah.
Steve Coleman had prepared that, so.
His
Yeah, he
recommendation.
mentions 3 in the memo, but I don't think that was right. I
I don't
circled
think
it.
it's right, no.
It should be minimum 5.
5.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
I guess since the ERB was a typo, but they're happy with 3, then perhaps in this situation, we will not require 10, but that's up to us. I guess we'll talk about it.
You can always extend it, 5 or 10.
Okay. So that's the extent of the wetland mitigation, right, that we proposed here?
Correct, yes.
And that has not changed from the last meeting, it was just a matter of getting the input of the ERB. And then there really have been no other substantive changes to the plan. I mean, there've been some additional information in the stormwater management report, but
And ERB has indicated that they agree with you that there's no point in putting any more plantings on that steep slope. We were out there, we noticed that it seemed to be bare, a lot of bare spots, but of course it was really marsh. So that
Yeah.
could have been a part of it, but
Yeah, there was, there wasn't too much of a chance to have the moss growing in there. They did, see some soil away from the roots, but there was a well-established Pachysandra plantings that were there, and they debated, they talked about having the amount of trucks coming in there bringing soil would be just unnecessary in
Well, I don't
this
think it's
case.
soil, I think it would be just
They also-
adding more plantings, more
There's more
Pachysandra.
They
Pachysandra.
also indicated that there was a root system under there, that the density of the Pachysandra and the bare area was indicative of that there was something under the earth that was preventing the roots from the Pachysandra to get there, that,
Right.
that the whole construct of that area was well protected from erosion. So I had attended that meeting with,
Yeah, walking the site with Steve, we talked about
exactly, and
Pachysandra slope and how it's actually making a contribution.
correct, and Steve also put that in his memorandum.
Yeah.
Good, okay.
That's largely it. If you have
Okay.
questions.
So I guess we can talk about some of the issues that Tom wants to talk about, I think, in terms of the site coverage mitigation, right?
Yeah, let's just go back to the numbers again. And we went over this last time, but I just want to sort of better understand where your proposal is with respect to that, and to really understand what the town should do about this. And there are there's more than one board involved with DRB, but there's also potentially a zoning board involved. If you don't buy the property, you'll need relief from your coverage. In fact, your over coverage and proposing even more coverage. And then there's this board for our approvals as well. So just to,
We're not proposing more, we're not proposing any additional
Right.
activities. We're not proposing any new coverage or additional coverage.
proposed required permitting is at 11,000. Right now, it's at 80. I'm going to the maximum building coverage. It's 8,000. Existing is 9,922, right?
Right, that's existing, and so we're just seeking to rectify that
Got
and
it.
make it conforming.
And so the building coverage is 22,178, and the existing is 34,000.
So that's development coverage.
I'm sorry, development coverage, correct.
That-
The
that-
other one's building coverage.
That's correct.
Correct, okay. So you're over quite a bit, and we talked about this last time, and your strategy was to, just to review this very quickly, was to buy that parcel. Could you go back to the overall? To buy the portion of the Durst property in order to get your math to work out. Which is that section there. And the little neck is a link back to then join those two parcels and make them one parcel, and the math works out, and everything is fine mathematically. I understand the math, and I understand the math argument, but there's more to this than just mathematics. That's why we have planning boards, we've been over this before, planning commissions to actually have some discretion about what the consequences of math are. We got zoning codes and subdivision codes that are all math, but they need to be interpreted for the benefit of the community and benefit of the environment, and that's what town staff does, and that's what the volunteers do. I am just not convinced that we ought to, it's up to you, I think, to go to the zoning board and to go ahead and buy the property, go to the zoning board and get relief, or propose that you're gonna do that, and they will say they'll give you relief if you buy the property. You don't need relief because you bought the property, right? I would rather that that you and the town together not do that. Because buying this piece of property, it doesn't matter whose hands this property is in, it really is not developable. The slope is so steep, and there's a wetland right in there. It's really not developable, as is most of that ridge line that going down to the road, down to the highway. It's really not developable. So there's no benefit to the town in any way for you to buy that property just to get the math to work. You can do that if you like. There's got to be some expense to that, which, right. And maybe we can avoid the expense and instead do something on the existing property, which is benefit to the town, that then an appeal to the zoning board could be made and saying, look, these people are actually doing something really special in the neighborhood. And therefore, would you please grant us relief with the blessing of maybe the ERB? I don't know, it's up to them. Maybe the planning board, that would be up to us. And so I'd like to propose something. Can you give us a blow-up of just the existing property? There's a pond here, and on the other side of the pond, there are woods, right? And I am not that familiar with how far those woods extend, but it's attached to quite a big area of woodland, unless I'm mistaken. I wonder if we could make this pond environment, instead of saying, well, we're just going to take this one little area and we're at the water's edge and do some landscaping to improve the filtration and get all that to work down in the pond. I'm wondering if we can't make this pond just a demonstration of what would be the best way to encourage habitat, to encourage clean water, to encourage all those things that are all in our town code, and just show it that this is the way it can be done. Take all the best principles, best practices, go into that pond environment and the area around it and say, look, this is something that is something we can all point to and be proud of. And I don't know what these things cost, but it may cost a lot less than going out and buying another, how many acres of property from the Durst Group.
4+.
Yeah, 4+1.
4+1. So,
Because you said it was an open conversation, and I'm putting that on the table.
So help me, because I'll go back and convey it to our client. So are we talking about some sort of mitigation area, expanding mitigation area in here? Are we talking about?
So, no, let me see if I can put it in different terms. Let's not, if we can for a moment, not talk about mitigation and not talk about codes. Let's talk about environments. And let's talk about wetland environments. And what would be the ideal, pick the 5 species of, I don't know, mammals, rodents, whatever it might be, or fish, or whatever it is. Maybe rodents is the wrong term. But I've got water rats in my pond, and you know, they live there and they're very happy there, and they contribute to the environment. So I'm going to use all the wrong terms because this is not my area of specialty, but somebody probably could and should, I think, ERB could say, okay, let's look at this and let's just talk about it as a prime example of the best way to encourage habitat in a pond and its surrounding area. And let them come up with the terms, let them come up with what that might be, and, with your participation, obviously. And propose that to your client as something which may be less expensive, something that they could be proud of, and I believe would add value to the property itself.
So in that instance, are we talking about this board being prepared to make, if we were able to arrive at such a plan, the board being prepared to make a favorable recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals? Because we had this conversation originally, and legally, I could not understand how the Zoning Board of Appeals would let us get through a process without first demonstrating that we didn't have the ability to acquire neighboring property, which is why it went in this direction in terms of you know, trying to achieve and meet the code requirements. I understand it's a numerical requirement, but it is a numerical requirement, and I can't avoid it. We can do all the greatest planning in the world. If I don't meet the numerical requirement, I have, you know, a continuing issue. So we did talk about it, and that's why we took the course that we took. It wasn't easy to get this contract for the additional land, but he did undertake to do that because we weren't confident that the ZBA would embrace a variance of this nature without seeing and having us demonstrate that we couldn't resolve it in another way that didn't involve the ZBA.
I think that if, I can't speak for them, but you clearly are prepared to make the numbers work for the benefit of the zoning board's responsibilities being satisfied. And I would wonder if you went to them and said, you know, we're prepared to do this if you require it. but the planning board has another idea, and in good faith, we're willing to look at this other idea and see if we can make that work in the hope that you will give us variances to proceed.
So the question, I mean, I think that in general, the idea of improving the buffer on the pond and doing that as an improvement for habitat, on its face is a better balance for the development coverage, because it's not just the numeric formula. My question is, from a legal perspective, can the zoning board do that? Because
Well, one of the factors, so the zoning board has a very prescribed statutory test that it has to apply to area variance applications, which this would be. And one of the 5 factors that they have to balance is there a mechanism feasible for the applicant to pursue that would result in no variance, that would eliminate the need for a variance. Here, the applicant has demonstrated there is a mechanism that they could pursue that would eliminate the variances. The feasibility question, I think, is what comes to mind, and if this board is telling the applicant what they've proposed may not be feasible in your eyes.
I didn't say that.
Well, but that's
That's the
what
term.
the
That's
zoning
the
board,
measure.
so they may be stuck between a rock and a hard place going to the zoning
But we
board.
could- but I'm not
Because of that,
saying-
but it is a balancing that the
Right,
zoning board,
right.
that's just one of 5 factors that the zoning board has to balance and weigh.
No, I understand, maybe I misunderstood you, but the planning board is not saying that the addition to that property is not feasible.
What I'm saying is that may be what the zoning board needs to hear in
Well, we could
order
also argue that
to
it's a
overcome that
highly
factor.
irregular lot line
Yeah.
that's being proposed here, and that's something that we try to avoid. And so, while it might be feasible, again, the math might work, this is not something that is consistent with what we do. So we
And
would,
that
we
may
could
be
actually
enough for them
object
to hear.
to this,
Yep.
and that might help.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be careful about a record of, creating a record where we
Can't do anything?
we can't get the lot line adjustment achieved. And we're talking about Durst, we're not talking about Burach. Burach is a swap. But with the lot line adjustment with Durst, because I need to be able to have that as a fallback if our client's signing on and willing to explore the alternative, I need to know that I can solve it in one way, shape, or form.
Well, we're not going to give you that assurance, obviously, because we can't. I mean, Bob brings up a very good point. That those lot lines and the configuration of that part of the parcel is not something that we would normally approve.
Well, but if
So
you,
don't ask, I'm sorry, but don't ask us to give you the assurance that, yeah, we're going to go ahead and approve it.
I have another question on another line. The wetland that's in the Durst property, is it a vernal wetland or is it a year-round one?
It's year-round.
It's year-round.
That's substantial.
It's a big pond.
yeah, it's a state wetland, I believe, too.
The little one?
Durst, I don't know,
On Durst.
the one that's off the property, I don't know.
You scroll down to the Durst.
Oh, you mean the
Yeah.
wetland on the Durst
This
property?
one right
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
probably
That-
vernal.
that-
It's more vernal.
It's probably vernal because it's on a steep slope.
If it's vernal, then that's something special which could be protected better, which would then be additional mitigation. You know, certainly you're not going to build anything there because of the
Right.
setbacks. Although somebody might want that dark green strip that used to be there, because it's right next to a knoll that's kind of flat where you could build something. But, which is also another benefit in that land being tied up so that you can't build something on that piece. But the vernal piece, if it is, and, I'd need an expert to really confirm it, but it's small enough, it's the right kind of thing that it is, that has usually has special organisms that are there and needs to be protected, more so than a regular wetland, which then shows something beyond just the math that you're taking on for a 10-year period or whatever to make that just as good as it can or should be.
And the code does speak to, in the subdivision chapter, when you're determining how to arrange lots, how to place the lot lines, things exactly of that nature are what the board should be looking at when determining where to place those lot lines, trying to preserve natural features where possible, balanced with creating safe building lots.
So one would, but it's still our discretion, and one would need to decide what the actual value of that vernal wetland is, right, in that particular location. And an alternative that the applicant may be willing to pursue, which may have a much greater environmental impact.
Yes.
Right, which could lend further assurance that even though there's an irregular lot line, it would be something that we would still be inclined to do.
Oh, right, I mean, I understand that. No, if you can just make it, I want the full size. I just want, so I understand you think it's irregular, but I do want to point out that there isn't really another shape that we could pursue. I mean, we did talk about this with staff too. I understand it's irregular, but this is the only place where we have a common boundary line to connect this piece with the Durst piece. And then it would just, obviously, we went to the numbers, we wanted to get the acreage to justify or to be able to legalize the nonconformities with the development with building coverage. We did talk to staff about going straight down to Roaring Brook Road. I mean, I didn't think that would be something that this board would embrace because it would suggest that maybe we're looking for development potential there that we didn't. So we were looking to take it off of the potential development inventory in the town, and that's a benefit, I think, in some respects, because there is, I wouldn't say that the entire site is useless for development purposes, and acreage alone can be useful in terms
Most
of
of it
counting
is
for
because
density.
of the setback. And we wouldn't
It
allow
is, it
buildings
is,
to be built
it
in the
is,
setback.
It is, but so it's not, I understand it's weird, but it's not like we could configure it differently in order to comply. So I did just want to point that out, because we did
Doesn't
look
your
at
client
that.
like to play tennis? There's a tennis court that could be bought.
Someone else's.
It's somebody else's.
That's somebody else's. That's an
No,
out piece,
but it could be
right?
bought.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know that it could be bought. I don't know that
I see.
that could be
Well,
bought.
in the
It's not,
argument,
it's not Durst, so.
so Jennifer, in the argument, I'm sorry, just to follow up on it, in the argument that the zoning board would need justification for, apparently, we're getting it, that this is the only configuration that the applicant could potentially purchase, and is a configuration which is not acceptable to the planning board. The zoning board now has a way in. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we can't speak to for the zoning board, right? But that's one of the factors that they're gonna need to balance
Sure.
amongst the five is there a feasible mechanism for the applicant to pursue
No,
that
there's
doesn't
the
involve
other,
variance?
and again, I don't want you to speak for them, but you said there are five. Are there any, four others? Could they apply here?
Well, they all apply, so they all have to be
In the
applied, they all have to be
No, I know they have
balanced,
to be
so,
applied, but in the service of where I would like to go.
Yep, so so the first is there a detriment to the neighborhood, community, or character? There is one, are the variances that they're requesting substantial? Is there a negative physical or environmental impact as a result of the variances, and is the variance self-created?
Self-created?
Self-created,
Okay,
which is not determinative in an area variance.
okay, thank you.
Well, and that exists in almost every instance, which gets to be.
Yeah, it's almost
It
never
almost
not
becomes
self-created.
for criteria,
Yeah.
so.
Well, is that something, though, that would be of interest to you to discuss with the client?
Well, I mean, look, our client isn't here, so he
I know.
can't address it here. We'd have to take it back, we'd have to talk to him about it. I don't know, I haven't had that conversation with him, but I don't know that we wouldn't. I mean, we'll have a conversation and we'll have to report back to you.
And so, Sabrina used the term buffer area. I'd just like to, for a moment, just forget all the planning and zoning language and just talk about environments. And I don't think that it would be necessary to take away the pond edge that the applicant currently enjoys and the way he enjoys it. There are lots of other things that could happen there, and that man could coexist with this thing, this great thing, what it could be, could coexist on that pond. So I'm not suggesting that anything is taken away from the applicant's rights or his perception of his rights until we obviously see it, but everything that's done could be additive.
Right, you're talking about improving the resource. I mean, that's what I hear you saying, whether it's adding, you know, whether it's stocking a pond or whatever it would be.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, which makes it harder, but it makes it easier in the sense that you're open-minded about what it might be, but harder because now we have to figure out how it fits in the whole larger context.
And I would encourage you, if you get the go-ahead, to at least take the next step, to work with staff, the ERB, if we can get Steve Coleman, back for this particular, because he's the guy of record, even though he's not available to us now, maybe he could be made available to sort of, blue sky this thing and come up with something that is derivative of the town's input as well.
Can I get a sense, is that the direction the board would like us to go in investigating?
Sounds like a good idea, but I understand the point that you made about not closing off the other option if this doesn't work out, so perhaps it could be positioned as, there are two ways of dealing with this coverage problem, the development coverage. If the planning board agreed, preference number one would be to create a better habitat out of the pond and use that as the mitigation for the overage and development coverage. And option number two would be looking at purchasing the Durst property to numerically close the gap, but not closing off either option because this has to be solved one way or another.
And I would add one thing to what Sheila said, is that purchasing the Durst property potentially may end up with being in possession of a vernal pond, your client, or pool, I should say. And if that's the case, they're relatively rare in this area. And that would be a benefit because no one is protecting it right now. Now, no one's damaging it, but it would be protected
It could also be enhanced.
and enhanced.
It could be enhanced.
Yeah, and so that to me is something that goes a long way to get rid of the irregularity of the parcel in my brain.
So it's helpful to the board to understand what the nature of that
Helpful to me.
wetland is.
Not necessarily helpful to
How much of the Durst property did you need to make your math work? All 4 acres plus, or did you guys buy extra?
Well, we have a little bit extra, so we do have a little buffer for building and development coverage, but it wasn't so that we could preserve building and development coverage capacity. It was because that's how the lot lines laid out. So we knew we needed to a certain minimum amount, and then when you do the lot lines, we ended up.
But this line, could this line be shifted to here? Would that
Oh.
cover, or do you really need all the way out there?
I don't think we could shift it as much as you described. It probably might be able to be moved a little bit. I don't know if we'd be able to keep it a continuous line. We'd have to do that math and see, because what we find is we have a little bit of capacity. We've got about,
So like 46,000 you can go up to, right?
yeah, well, we have, no. We can go up to 34,680. So we've got 669 square feet of additional development coverage. That's our gap between what we have and what would be permitted as the maximum. And then building coverage, it would be 1,983 square feet additional building coverage. But obviously, that's not really the case because you can't go over the development.
Right.
Because what?
Because you can't go over the development coverage, because building coverage is included in development coverage. So we're really talking about 669 square feet.
Right.
That would be the
Threshold
threshold.
there.
Right, exactly.
If we were living in the past, we could get Walden to build another place, because that's about the size his was. And that would be fine, because it was right near a lake and everything else. It's not too big.
But I think
Yeah, I
it's-
wouldn't get a wetland permit for that though now.
I think it's always intriguing.
You build it outside in the corner.
I think it's intriguing if we can ever move from just the two-dimensional maps into something that's environmentally more productive. So if it's something that's possible, in talking with the client, I think it's an interesting alternative to pursue. To
So
investigate anyway.
is there an example where it's been done?
No.
Okay, I was gonna say, I'd go look at the file and see how it was analyzed,
Well,
how it
in
was
town,
approached, yes.
I'm sure there's examples where it's been done, but not necessarily in this town.
No, I mean in this town.
Yeah, not this
Okay.
time.
And we always appreciate when someone comes in and is willing to be the point person on something brand new.
Anyway,
I may get beaten up tomorrow for this, but I will take it back to our client and we'll have a conversation about it, and I'll explain.
Save your client money.
Yeah,
It might,
I'm guessing it will,
Yeah,
Well,
I'm guessing too.
look,
but I think it's pretty.
if it won't, it's unlikely that our client will embrace it with gusto, but let us have a conversation. I mean, we did not think about that as an approach, we really didn't. We didn't think about where it sits in a corridor, for example, of a wetland system and a woodland system, and we just didn't approach it that way,
Oh, that's
so let's
fair.
take a look.
so,
Yeah.
notwithstanding that, should we not schedule this now for a public hearing with your application as is? Because if you come back, you're just going to withdraw or change the application and basically go to the ZBA with, I guess, some friendly help from us.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't mind having a public hearing scheduled, just so I can show some progress, but in the meantime, I understand that
Does that seem to
you
make
would be,
sense?
you would be looking for us to get back to you with an answer.
Because I think on the application itself, we have looked at it, investigated it. Whether or not it's going to be acceptable, in the end, we'll see. But I think we can schedule that and move forward in that way.
And it would be on all, I mean, we have multiple applications before you.
Yes.
Okay.
Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Well, that enthusiastic endorsement.
Let's move on before he changes his mind.
Yes. Do we have a motion to schedule?
Well, I just, I want to be respectful of the applicant and his team, and in good faith, hope that you guys will pursue this idea and see if it leads anywhere. I may have a different set of values than your client does, but if it turns out to be, he can find some way within his set of values to do this, I think it would be a terrific thing to do.
Yeah, based on the history of how your client uses the pond and the area around the pond, I would think an opportunity to make it even more of a place for he and his family to enjoy would be receptive.
Or to sell.
Or to sell.
Yeah, no, it is. I understand your point, and it's one that's, we didn't think about it.
expect
So
it,
let's
yeah.
go back.
No, it's great.
Let us talk to him about it.
Thank you for being open about it.
Yeah, no, let us talk to him about it, let us see how it works, we'll investigate what's going on in that wetland, in that system, and we'll see, then you'll have more to be able to weigh.
Maybe the dark green shifts to the wetland area.
We'll find out.
There you go.
What would be a good date, Janice, for scheduling a public hearing?
June 19th?
It might be too close. We have
July 2nd, the deadline is June 10th.
Okay.
Jennifer or Janice or Bob, once we open the public hearing, are we not compelled to close it within a certain time frame? No? Okay.
Yeah, let us see, because
Yeah.
depending on what our client's reaction is, that may not even be enough time for us, because
Right.
we may need to be able
We'll
to do
tentatively
more
schedule
work.
for that. But is there a motion then to move it for a public hearing on July 2nd? What's that, Janice?
Everyone good, that's a tough week. Are we gonna have a quorum for that
Yeah,
meeting?
I'm not traveling.
July 2nd?
Make
I'm
sure.
here.
Yeah.
So what's a job?
I'm gone.
Well, I think I'm here.
I'm here.
Okay, that's three, okay. Just wanna check.
Okay.
It's my favorite holiday of the year.
Are you here?
Are you here?
So are you here?
I am here, yes.
Celebrating it with us.
I would love to spend it here.
Oh, nice cover. Nice reaction, okay.
She needs a vacation.
We're gonna watch and see if you come dressed red, white, and
Exactly,
blue.
right.
I'll bring the
So,
burgers.
so we'll have a motion then?
Motion, okay.
No.
Motion to move a public hearing on this application.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
very good.
Interesting.
Okay, we have another informal hearing, continued hearing on 767 King Street LLC, Chislehurst subdivision lot number 6. An application for a site plan amendment, steep slopes permit amendment, tree removal permit, stormwater pollution prevention plan, 767 King Street. You get a stretch, I'm sorry, had to sit and,
All right.
Mr. Chairman, before we start this application, I want to say that I've recused myself for personal reasons.
oh, okay,
And I will step away.
alrighty.
You guys get to set up the computer first.
A laser.
The laser.
Yeah, I don't have
Okay. You borrow ours.
Here's one.
Thank you, borrow that.
The code. That's the good code.
Did you guys come all the way?
Are you going to head back to the Hamptons?
Last time we had
It's
a
gonna be
table, sit next to it.
At least you'll feel your feet this time. Last time you were out there in the cold without shoes on.
Worst case scenario, I can stand by.
We all made it back alive somehow.
More favorable
Wireless
conditions.
Good thing we love what we do.
Well,
Well, this will be the test.
For now.
If you have a job.
better people have crawled out of here, hating their jobs.
But it is true, if you love what you're doing and someone is foolish enough to
if we have
pay
a
you.
wireless mouse, maybe
That's
that's
wonderful.
or
That's just
alternatively,
fabulous.
we can take turns clicking next, while the speaker is at the
You
mic.
can move a chair up here if that's.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the easiest way to do
And
it.
the mic moves, you can
Yeah,
take it
that'd be
off.
great.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's detachable. Well, you can take it out and do it, you know.
Drop the mic.
They do at sports events.
So I don't need this for my portion of it.
Oh, yeah?
You're gonna start the.
That I'm gonna start, yeah. Okay. Here. And then, Dan, I guess while Lori's speaking, do you want to rest up the presentation and then you guys can switch?
What a
Is that
sign.
okay?
What a sign. I think
Great.
better than the actual price.
Yeah.
Solving the problems.
Have you played it?
Too congested.
It's all better.
Ready?
Oh, it's
We are.
Go back a little bit.
It's good.
I'm sorry about that.
It's okay, we positioned it there purposely so you don't block our view.
I would have thought the planner would have put some forethought into this.
Yeah.
It's okay, you gotta just move on, and then everybody will fall on.
Don't worry about it, they'll all fall in line. Control the
Fine,
road.
it's late.
Eventually, yes.
Chug through. Evening, everybody.
Good evening.
For the record, my name's Steve Rabel. I'm with the law firm of McCullough, Goldberger, and Stout. I'm here with Lori Beppu of Blaze Makewood Architecture, Dan Thorpe of LaGuardia Design, and Alan Pilch of ALP Engineering. It's been a little while since we were last before you. Our last meeting was November of last year, and we've obviously had a site walk since then, with everyone in the room still, and we've also had some meetings with staff. A quick reorientation about the property. It's 12.9 acres in size. It was part of that Chiselhurst subdivision. It was known as Lot 4. It's subject to a pretty substantial conservation easement so that there's a 2.6 acre building envelope. You'll recall there was a prior approval for a single-family home. We're here asking for an amended site plan approval for a different layout for a single-family home. Since we last appeared before you, we did take a lot of your comments into consideration. We've provided a lot of responses to the consultant's memos, and we actually shrunk the footprint of the building a little bit by about 1,266 square feet. So what we'd like to do now is have Lori walk you through the architecturals, Dan take you through a lot of the landscaping, Alan can touch base on the stormwater, and then if you have any questions, we're here to answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Lori Beppu. I'm here representing Blaze McCoy Architecture and our clients Gary and Samara Klein. As you can see, although Steve mentioned that we've made some changes to the overall size of the project, the strategy remains the same. We wanted to, from the very beginning of this project, approach the site with a light hand and create an intervention that treated the topography in a very sensitive and the least disruptive fashion possible. The design was inspired by the natural beauty of the site and a desire to knit the site into the existing topography. The program is split between two stacks of volumes. In this slide you can see one of those stacks. And within each of the stacks the volumes shift in order to create green roofs, such as here, terraces, and covered outdoor living spaces like here, and that's a covered space there. The proposed design works with the existing steep slopes, which we had the chance to slip and slide on together when we went on our site walk, by terracing the volumes in tandem with the contours and nestling them into the hill, which I think this slide shows quite well. In addition to one thing that is an important design component is the green roofs, which you can start to see here. And as we look at the plans, you'll get a better picture of the extent of them. Can you back up for 1 second, Dan? One more. So in addition to the green roofs, the space between the two stacked volumes here becomes an important element in the stormwater management plan. And Dan and Alan will speak to that in a little bit more detail.
Is that area touched at all? Is that basically you're trying to keep it as is, as it appears out there right now?
You know, I think there's going to be some regrading involved, just because of the extent of the overcut for the foundation. But we'll try to leave it as pristine as possible.
How do the two stacks join? I'm missing something.
So there's a link on the first level here, and then a link on the second level here, as well as they're connected below grade.
So
at the
that's all
lower level.
glass, then? It's going to be glass walkways or something?
Glassy links, yes. Yeah, and I think we can probably move into the plans now. So in the set of plans, you'll see that the extent of the previous plan is that dashed red line. And as Steve mentioned, we're reducing the footprint by over 1,200 square feet, which allowed us to really have a much more generous buffer between the house and the limit of clearing and grading, which was something that came up in some of our discussions with you previously.
I'm not quite sure I understand that statement. I don't have my pointer.
Do you want this pointer?
Here.
No, I've got one here. You say it's this is pulled back, right?
Yeah, it's actually this slide though, sorry, that'll show you.
So this is the ground
This is
level
where you
plan.
were.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And so you've pulled in, but
on both sides.
on both sides, but you still have all this, and this is all on that steep slope right here, these in front. So it seems to me that you've pulled the house back, but your footprint in terms of disturbance is still very substantial, unchanged?
It's changed quite a bit.
It has? Okay.
Yeah, what this graphic isn't showing is the pool and everything attached to the house retreated with it.
Okay. So is the pool, but the pool hasn't pulled, has the pool pulled back from where it was, or
Yes.
is it? Oh, it has?
Yeah.
It has.
So that was
Yeah.
down, further down here as
Yes.
well?
In fact, in the
okay.
roof plan, we show the outline of the previous pool location. So I think we can jump ahead.
Jump ahead.
Yeah. There we go.
Okay,
So
perfect.
there's the
There you
old pool versus the new
Oh, yeah,
pool
that's
as well as the spa.
go. Okay, now
So
I
there's-
follow. Okay,
there's
got it.
a much greater buffer
Yeah.
between that limit. As we've discussed previously, green roofs comprise about 40% of the proposed building coverage. And we plan to incorporate a sizable array of solar panels on top of the north wing of the house.
And you have enough sunlight to make that worthwhile? I mean, you're not taking down all the trees, you're taking 50 down, but you're not
True.
taking all the trees down, and
this
you're
is-
really gonna get enough sunlight.
This
there.
is south here. so
This
Yeah,
is
something
south, so I
exposure.
think the clearing of the house is gonna facilitate that.
Enough. I think I've good,
Yeah?
good exposure.
Oh, yeah. But only, well, I mean, your solar guys have
Tell you.
worked this out, but east-west is a different situation.
True.
I mean, it looks like you may not get that much from, what's this, the west?
West.
Yeah.
In the morning, you probably get, it all depends on what's going on. Isn't this where that yard is? That area?
Well, it's
over
further,
here.
it's further north.
It's up in here.
Yeah, that's where the
okay.
septic goes,
Right.
that area. That little valley.
Right. Okay.
So we've included elevations of each aspect of the house. Here's the north elevation. We'll move through these pretty quickly. South lake facing elevation.
That's the south facing the lake?
Correct.
So the pool would be down in front of
This
the
is
lower
the
area
pool
here?
zone here. East elevation. West elevation. And then the next two are basically the interior elevations that are facing each other. So those connectors that we were talking about between the two volumes are here and here. And we've included a section through the green roof to give you a sense of our typical detail, which includes a perimeter gutter And then the live roof modules should be here. Here's an example of a project that LaGuardia produced that uses the live roof system.
Could you, I'm sorry, go back to the previous detail? I'm just curious about the downspouts. Are these actually within the structure, or are they?
So these would be routed internally.
Internally.
This diagram just shows the coverage and the green roofs relative to the overall building coverage. Again, that red dashed line is the previous extent of coverage.
Dan Thorpe with LaGuardia Design, landscape architects.
You can
You can
raise.
detach the mic.
Or raise
Hurt your
Very
back.
uncomfortable.
Or raise it, yeah.
Raise it, there's-
I'm like traveling 2.5 hours with a bad back, you know.
Thank you. Our last coverage plan ended at the property line. So what we've done with this updated coverage plan is actually, we're now showing the driveway all the way back to King Street. The coverage calculations are in the lower left. There is site development coverage and building coverage. One clarification on this plan is that originally we were presuming a 50%, presuming 50% coverage for the portion of the driveway that was not on the property. However, we are now being told that it would count 100% of the driveway would count towards overall development coverage. In any regard, if you had the site development coverage to the building coverage, even with the 100% driveway coverage, we're still well under the total allowable number by the tune of about 14,000 square feet.
So when we calculate that, we use the full 12 acres that they own, even
Correct.
though it's under a conservation easement with the DEP?
Correct.
Okay.
Laura, you can shoot to the next one, it's a little more exciting. So this is the proposed landscape plan based on the reduced footprint of the house. Essentially, the landscape and the devices we're using for storm water control and stabilization along the edges of the house just retreated back with the house away from the development lines. But the ideas are all still the same. Just to walk you, just to refresh you on how the site design works. This is the bridge. Come off the bridge, you actually come down to the lower motor court area where you can tuck into the garage doors, or you go back up the slope to the front parking area. There is a front walkway to the door, and then around the side of the house, that would be all revegetated garden area. Any disturbed areas will be revegetated with native ground covers and native trees and native shrubbery to knit back into the surrounding forest. These are the elevated terraces and covered areas that Laura is pointing out in the 3D renderings with the attached spa and pool. Some photos on the right just showing how we would revegetate the sanitary area. The desire is not for a mowed lawn over this portion of the property. There's really no mowed lawn anywhere on the property. It would be restored as a native meadow, taking advantage of the sunlight for native wildflowers and grasses that wouldn't survive elsewhere due to the shade. Connections along the side, yeah.
What would the maintenance be on this meadow area? You know, cutting once a year or twice a year?
We actually
something like this?
have, on the planting plan, we have a maintenance program. In order for the meadow to succeed, you do have to cut it twice a year. Otherwise, it'll overgrow itself and the grass plants will die.
Good, okay.
We did submit that. It's a non-fertilization zone. Very low maintenance, self-sustaining. Yep, and on the left side,
Will the meadow also be over the septic area?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Correct.
I forget where your expansion area, is that up there also, Alan?
It's way up.
Way up there, that's way
It's on the
past, right? It's
development.
really attenuated.
It's on the far side. I could show you on the development plan.
Is that gonna be meadow, or do you have to clear that, or
I don't think so.
you're gonna get a waiver from the county?
We'll seek a waiver. Keep going back. Oh, no.
Because that would be a lot of clearing.
Got cut off. But it's way up here.
Yeah.
Will the, that septic area, will you have to pump to it, or is there enough gravity that?
No, it has to get pumped.
It's pumped.
Okay.
One thing that I think we all noticed on our field walk, and one thing we've, as landscape architects, fell in love with about the existing forest are the native ecology of American beech trees, and this is them in the fall. So, drawing inspiration from that, you'll see on our planting plans, a large portion of the revegetation involves American beech trees repopulating all of the disturbed zones around the house and up the driveway. Thank you. Another tree that populates some of the forest, the majority of the forest is the American beech and the maple, but some gray birch does exist there. This is also a native tree that we'd like to repeat around the house. Again, just bringing the forest right up to the house. Underplanting other disturbed areas with native bayberry and other native shrubbery. And then the ground plane, kind of reknitting that together with sedge grasses. We like sedge grass because it grows rhizominously and it's like steel wool along the ground plane of the disturbed area, so it's going to really restore those nicely.
I think Steve Coleman had an issue or just a question or observation about the diversity of some of the plants that you proposed to put in. And he was a little bit concerned, although it'll be very attractive, having all beeches, in terms of the attacks on native species around here, whether or not that might be wise to have more of a diversity of other species.
Right, and that, I think that was more, because this upland area around the house, there actually is quite a bit of diversity on the planting plan. I think what he was talking about was the long driveway in, and I have a plan for that.
Yeah.
We're more than happy to mix in some other species.
Can I ask a question about the bridge? Which was it's kind of an engineering question. So, it was really unique, of course, because it was, 2x6, 2x8s, 2x10s, pressure treated 2x10s on. So, my understanding is pressure treated wood is good for what, 25 years, 30 years? And this has already been up 10 years?
About 10 years, correct.
So, what's the engineering longevity of this? And do we have an engineering approval of this? If I talk to my fire department friends, they don't want to drive on something that's not going to survive. So the issue is, what is the longevity, and should we get an engineering statement on this, saying that it remains in good shape, and what's the longevity expected, et cetera?
Well, when it was designed, we had all the plans, all the calculations, they built it, we had the as-built, but it's been lack of maintenance through 10 years. I would recommend that's a good point. Have them retain the services of a structural engineer and do a full report to make certain it doesn't need any repairs. And it's still functioning as to sustain an H20 loading.
Particularly.
That's going to be critical for the fire department.
Yes.
I've spoken to the dearest, and he's mentioned those to me, and that's a good point.
Okay.
And that should definitely be put in the resolution.
It's something we've spoken with our structural engineer about already. They've visited the site.
It looked great, but I just, who knows what it is underneath?
And they've got to get trucks in to build, so you have to make sure.
It's got to work for them too.
Right, I think we're all concerned with the safety of the bridge. What we'll need to do is get a team to field document the bridge by rappelling off the side of it, because the embankment is too steep to document it directly. So that's a process that we can initiate.
They do that before they have the concrete trucks come over, which weigh that 80,000 pounds.
Right.
Yeah.
Good idea.
What weighs more, a fire truck or the?
Concrete truck.
Concrete truck, yes.
No doubt about it, so I would do that sooner than later.
Because if it collapses, it'll be easier to investigate, because then there's something to stand on.
Well, it would also be a wetland violation.
So this is just, and we touched on this in our first presentation, just acknowledgement of the existing flow channels on site, and Alan will speak more to this on his slides, but, or his plans.
Are those the existing, or are those the ones that are now there because of whatever development we saw 10 years ago?
This one is really existing. What is this?
The one to the
This one
east?
Yeah, this one is essentially existing now.
Yeah.
The
other
other
seems
one-
like a little bit more man-made.
The other one less so.
Yeah, okay.
So, the areas immediately around the house have been supplemented since you last saw the plan with a fairly extensive stormwater management design, including many stormwater planters. These are terrace planters along the front of the house. There's a planter between the stacked volumes of the house, and then there are multiple underground storage facilities that Alan will walk you through. And again, this is just that idea of how we're going to be treating the areas immediately along the edge of the building where we're concerned about future erosion and how we might stabilize those with a mixture of planting and rubble, riprap. You can hit that again. Just,
That nicely shows the green roofs.
yeah, so you can see how, the green roofs, how they tie in. This is just a
Nicely.
3D view of how the house sits in the forest and respects the existing flow channels. During our last meeting with staff, they brought up that the tree removal plan should better illustrate what's actually being removed and what's actually being proposed. So in glaring red are the trees we're removing. We're really trying to save every tree where it makes sense. We're not trying to go out of our way to cut down any trees. We acknowledge that the beauty of the site is the forest. We'd be devaluing the property by going out of our way to cut down trees. So in red are the trees are cutting down, in green proposed. This is the mixture of proposed native trees that we're using to revegetate the forest.
Do you have any comments to Steve's suggestions? He has a couple trees that he specifically earmarked
Yes.
that he thought could be saved with some changes and perhaps some additional protections.
Yeah. I think he just wanted further clarification on why certain trees had to go, especially up in this area. I don't know that he fully recognized the lift in elevation to make the septic system operational. So the filling of this area and the regrading of this area, unfortunately, is going to incur the removal of a few trees. So I can further clarify that. There are some key trees that he talked about, like this 28-inch oak tree off the right side of the driveway after you pass the bridge, which we'll be protecting with a chain link fence at the drip line. And so I went through all those points, and I'll get back to them.
Good,
by
okay,
one.
great, thank you.
Can I ask you to blow up the pool area for a minute on this drawing?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I agree with the objective to save as many trees
Yeah.
as you can, but unless I'm mistaken, this pool's gonna be in shade. I mean, you've got a 30-inch oak here, which is at about the elevation, same elevation as the pool. There's a beech tree here, which is a 20-inch. There's a big oak over here, 30-inch oak over here. And, I'm concerned that, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that those are big trees. And I'm guessing that you're gonna have, the homeowner's going to have a pool which is primarily in shade for most of the swimming season, so to speak. So I'd like you to consider, just tell me whether you agree with that or not. And I'm concerned that once you're done and once it's built, that there's going to be the desire to actually come in, the homeowner to come in and cut these trees down. So I think that it'd be good if this is an unrealistic plan in that respect. I'm not saying it is, but I feel like it is. Would it be wise to just go ahead and recognize that if it's true and come in and come in with a proposal for what it would take to get sun on the pool, what trees need to come down? It'd be better that that was permitted and done with in a reasonable plan, from a reasonable conclusion, rather than having the homeowner come back later and just do what he wants to do.
And the other issue, I think, that's part of it, this is all on very steep slope.
Sure.
So when we have the removal of those trees, we also realistically ought to get some sort of idea what we're going to do with those slopes and stabilizing them. So I think that's a very good point that Tom has made, but there's also another part to it, not only just the clearing of the trees, but what the impact might be to the steep slopes and how we're going to mitigate those kinds of issues. Because we had a hard time walking in some of those areas. It was wet and slippery, and but it was really steep. It really drops off. And the whole thing, I mean, you're asking for a pool in a very steep slope area as it is. But if you're going to start removing additional trees, or even these trees, that's something that we have to look at and make sure we're in good shape on that.
We do have a site section coming up that shows how we're going to be addressing the steep slopes.
While you're doing that, to Tom's point, if you have trees around it, then the pool's going to get dirty quicker in the spring and late spring, when you might have put water in it already and you still have junk coming down in the way of seeds and everything. So that's also going to tempt the homeowner to take extra action.
Right. All right, we can discuss that with the owner. I think, I imagine he'd be open to taking down additional trees. It was always our standpoint that we really enjoyed the foreground of the trees, and I think he enjoys it as well, as kind of a baffle between him and the lake. But
We're just asking you to think about it, not to do it. So it's
In the design element with this angle, is there a particular need for that? Does that, I can't recall exactly, but does that impact the slopes more than if it were just a rectangular? I mean, I understand you're going for some sort of architectural treatment and finish or feel. It's above my pay grade.
I think the angle is really being driven by the clearing and grading limit line. And so we're trying to maximize the size of the pool within that zone.
Oh, I see. I see, because the line itself is angled.
Correct.
Okay. So if you didn't have that, you might actually have a larger pool and, okay.
I have another question. And I'm interested here as the people approach this. The first view is going to be 4 bays of cars.
well, no, we're trying to screen that with these trees.
Screen it out that way, I see.
Yeah, so these trees would be low understory trees at eye level. That was actually a big architectural issue we were having early on. So, and there would be a wall here as well to help hide that zone when you first pull
Why do you
out.
need 4 cars? Is this going to be, like a multi-family house?
No.
Why 4 cars?
I think you can have as many cars as you like.
The owner is a car collector, so he does have a few extras.
I see.
And a growing family.
Getting into the... Thank you for the answer. I did notice, did you pick the car symbols specific to the cars he owns?
No.
Because I saw a couple Porsches in there.
So you want to visit once it's open and, ready. That's a good point.
So this shows the proposed tree planting plan between the bridge and King Street. The red dashed line that falls along the edge of the driveway is the limit of grading and clearing. The green symbols are the American beech groves that we were proposing to plant that we will now mix in a little more diversity within. The several areas along the driveway for stormwater treatment are going to be softly regraded as swales to rain gardens. And so those rain gardens will be replanted with shade-loving, water-loving ground covers and shrubbery.
This is a neighboring house here?
Correct.
Okay. And I can't quite make out where the bridge is. Is it up here?
No, it's further up.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, so I know that this house is down lower.
Yeah.
Significantly. Is this going to be an open space here where
Well,
you
this,
have?
This green line is actually their edge of clearing, so this is all vegetated on their
Okay.
side.
So it's
I
pretty
think that was
dense right now.
planted maybe
A number of years ago.
and now it's grown up.
They've also installed a lot of conifers along that boundary too.
So we're trying to be respectful of the neighbors. There's another neighbor up here to the,
Yep.
I guess to the north that we're trying to screen as well. The additional trees.
Well, I think there's also an awful lot of work that still has to be done, right, just to comply with the old approvals, and I think Bob has mentioned that in his memos. So that's very, very important to get that up to speed.
With the stormwater. too.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
quite a bit of stormwater. Alan and I had discussions about it today. He can speak more on it when it comes up.
Just hoping it'll come up sooner before we collapse here.
All right, I'll just shoot through the last slide. You can go to the, this is just a cross-section through the house showing the driveway, the entry, how the house terraces with the grade. Green is the existing grade. So with every move we're making, we're trying to tie back into existing grade as quickly as possible. And you can see at the stepped pool, we're leaving a good buffer so that by the time we get to that grading clearing line, we're marrying back into the existing topography.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Why don't you go back a few slides? I'll use your slide in here. Prior one? One more. Another one? That's fine. So I'll just briefly go over how the stormwater plan works. Oh yes, I should hold this. The northern part of the house here, the north wing, is the one that has primarily the solar collectors, and it has regular roof drain leaders. The roof drain leaders are going to drain into these stepped stormwater planters, which are designed in accordance with Chapter 5 of the New York State Stormwater Management Design Manual. And the excess runoff from the water quality volume that's captured and treated in here goes to a subsurface pipe system as a detention system in the driveway. The driveway, of course, is a permeable material. That's the intent, and I can show you an example. I only have two hands. One of which, now the one in the lighter color one happens to be, that's actually Perma Drive, which I'll call the successor pavement to Flexi Pave. Flexi Pave was the one that was installed at, what is it, 725 or 735 King Street. The Blyer property or the Fitzsimmons property, that was the one that was installed there. But this is really, I'll call it the successor pavement of it. And basically, it's a bound, kind of, I'll call it rounded stone. It's not like sharp material. And it's over an aggregate base and a reservoir course. The other one is the FlexiPay, which we would not be using on this, just because of the nature of the abrasion which occurs with car tires. That's what they've noted recently. So it's more appropriate for...
So which one are you?
No, the one on your right hand is the one that would be used. The FlexiPave is the one that would... That's the one that's made from tires.
Yeah, what's the binding agent?
What did he call it?
And does that?
It's proprietary.
It's a type of...
How does that?
It's
not
epoxy or something.
No, it's some other word that he used. I can't remember what it was now. He told me earlier. I tell you this, today I actually poured water on it just to watch it, just so it flows right through. It really does. It's pretty amazing to see.
An engineer.
No, it's really is pretty good. At any rate, so the driveway itself, the entire driveway will be pervious, and any excess runoff would go into the stormwater detention facility, which is located here. And any excess runoff from the stormwater detention facility actually goes to a level spreader, since the pool has been pulled back. Since the pool has been pulled back from the edge, there's actually a level spreader here, which puts any excess runoff into the wooded area, because it has to be discharged somewhere here. The other thing that happens here is the green roofs also treat the runoff, and the calculations were done in accordance with Chapter 5 in the green roof section. And the excess runoff, and some of the runoff from the terraces here, goes into a subsurface chamber facility located here, which captures and treats the runoff reduction volume, which is a requirement as well. So we also did calculations of the peak flow of runoff on the current condition versus the future condition, and there's a decrease in runoff for all storms, the 110 and 100-year storm, which are the typical ones that are monitored. And if you go back to with the slide showing the entire extent of the drive from King Street, I just want to, I guess, no, it's further along. It's further down. That's it. I'll just say, in the original plan, the original approval back in, when I was a much younger child, back in 1999 and 2002, the only treatment that was ever afforded in the whole area was, there were 2 level spreaders which go to filter strips, wooded filter strips. That was it that was provided here. But in this plan, in order to provide additional runoff reduction volume and treatment of runoff, we actually provided 2 rain gardens, one located here, one located there, just before the bridge approach itself. And that also treats the water quality volume. And the trees themselves that are being planted here will also, in accordance with Chapter 5, can be applied for runoff reduction volume as well. Because tree planting is one of the items that is acceptable as well. So that will actually reduce it even further. So that's kind of in a nutshell how the stormwater management plan works. And as Bob said, I met with him today, and we discussed certain other of the comments that he made, and we'll work on approaching that and working out some other solutions. I'll say it's a very unique plan because it's unusual to use so much green infrastructure, stormwater management in a plan. You know, there are few plans that you do that have green roofs and stormwater planters and tree planting, and that's essentially what you're doing. But as I say, the conventional part is the subsurface pipes which provide stormwater detention, and the Caltech chambers located on the the valley side, if you will, excuse me, which will provide the runoff reduction volume.
So you need to put Coltech on that side, on the eastern
So
side?
it will be on this side, just to provide something for runoff reduction volume.
Okay.
All of those qualities about how you're dealing with the water here.
I'm sorry?
All the qualities of the way in which you're dealing with stormwater here with the rain guards and so on and so forth, and in a way that's unusual because there's so much green that's being used. That's the attitude that is taken at for the previous applicant with respect to that pond. Just go for it. Sorry. It's a huge digression.
Yeah, well,
but
it's a nice improvement from what you did 15 years ago.
Oh, it's a huge improvement, no question about it. But also the regulations have changed substantially since then also.
That's right.
You know, we didn't have the 2010 design manual nor the 2015 general permit.
Dark ages.
No, those were the dark ages.
You're a better man today.
But I predate all those ages.
One concern I had with it's a nice idea to use this material, but it's only good on certain slopes, less than 5%. Now, if you're gonna use it on things greater than 5%, you have the bench. There's a lot of rock. So if you can't use it on grades greater than 5, you might as well just use asphalt or use 98 curb number. That was my biggest concern with this because it looks good, it's great, but it's good for flat areas.
I'll just point out one thing, if I may. Can you just go to the slide which shows some more details?
And some of the, just so you know, some of the grades.
I understand.
10%.
Sure, yes. We walked it, yeah.
Which is very expensive.
Some of the slope here is that much.
That's 10% right there.
Right, but if you actually calculate the area that is here, and you use the equations of Chapter 5 to figure out how much area you need in order to treat the runoff from pervious driveway surface, that entire area calculates to less than this area here in this motor court. So that's how, I'm just saying, just so you know, that's how the calculation was
If you have
done.
other grades going to it, that's fine.
Right, but it will actually it'll migrate down this way anyways, because the slope
I could have sworn
from
you
the
calculated.
bridge is to this direction and
Use
in this
98.
direction.
I thought you used 98 anyway.
No, we did not.
You should. It's 10%. That's my point.
Okay, I'll look at that. We'll have other discussions later.
Yes, I'm sure you will. Well, it's better to do that in daylight.
We had a discussion today for a period of time
We're
this
not going to bore
afternoon.
everyone with the details, but we have a lot of discussions.
We'll have further discussions on it. But I just want to at least go over it briefly for you, because I know the hour's late. It's been a long night.
I have two things. Are you finished?
I'm quite finished.
I noticed you had a slide, view shed, you had from house to house. I'd like to see that.
From off-site?
Here. Okay, so that's a plan view. You have a,
So this is the plan view of the neighboring context. And the series of numbers starting here along King Street, we've documented in photographs. So you can see the view from King Street looking towards Whippoorwill Lake,
Yeah, which you can't see.
which you can't see at all.
Right.
And then there's a series that start to move you down the driveway. So here we are at 767. This is the existing driveway. This is that neighbor to the north that we were speaking of.
Right.
And then here you can make out the other neighbor.
That's the one to the south?
Correct.
Right. Isn't that lower? The house is
It is lower, yeah.
Okay.
And
See it from above.
Okay, yeah.
I'll just flip through these quickly. These are photos of the model that our office produced. That gives you a little bit of a sense of the scale of the house relative to the site.
And then you had, on the view shed, you had a couple of views from the other homes on the eastern side of the lake? I guess we don't have those. You have to be on private property, I guess, to see that.
Right. Yeah.
Could you go back to the site section?
Well, we could finish this first.
That's all
So-
interesting to see, though.
Hmm?
That would be interesting to see.
So, are they going to see this house?
They will.
Ones.
They will.
They will.
But I mean, there's a substantial amount of tree cover, particularly during the summertime, that it's going to be obscured. It's not going to be a straight view. And we've noticed that even when you're standing on site looking across at those houses, you don't see very much. You almost feel like they're not there.
Okay, so where this goes is when, giving screening where possible for everybody, and secondly, keeping the lighting under control, so nighttime lighting is not a problem, for all that money that's going to be spent here and everything. You don't want neighbors that are unhappy, because they've also spent a lot of money, and they know how, they have the phone directory as to who to call, I think. And this new person that's going to buy this, he may not know where that is, that directory, so. But so, I'm getting at is, if there is, I don't know how to judge it without really seeing something in a vertical slice. Often we have trees that, when you put the trees in that are evergreens, then you can see that the house doesn't get to see much, and you won't be seen. So I need you to take a look at that, if you'd be so kind. Do that. And the other thing is that the house has a lot of glass. Now, it has the benefit of the rooftop rain gardens is that insulates the house. And I think in addition to controlling the water and everything else, that's good for the roof. But is this a house that has more glass than normal in what you're used to building? Or is it all the way up to Frank Lloyd Wright, who used to build wonderful houses that leak like hell because the metal and the glass moved around a lot?
Well, I mean, I think that what's considered normal is probably relative. For our firm, it's not an unusual extent of glass.
Okay, good.
All right.
The color and texture, you've modeled it, I think, a little bit, so is it like a dark color? Again,
It is, yeah,
designing
it's
to
intended to blend in.
Right.
So I can show you a sample of the stone.
Which is, I think that's important, too.
I think
We've looked
that's
at
very
that.
important, particularly, compared to one of the houses that's on the other side is red, and that stands out.
Well, that's on the driveway coming up, yeah. So this is what?
This is the kind of the skin of the main volumes on the first and second floors.
Okay, good.
Is this stone or is it porcelain?
It's actually porcelain with a slate look.
So this is the texture of the exterior of the home?
Correct.
That's good. I like that.
Greg, you want to see it?
So that's everything you're seeing in
I
gray
see,
here.
great, okay.
All right, and so the glass will be higher than the old thermal numbers, the better thermal numbers, which still only make it about a third of what wood is, right?
Well, it has to meet code. Will this be a lead structure?
Most likely not.
Okay. I don't think so.
It will rank high in our green building code.
It will, good.
Yeah.
Terrific, okay.
But the energy use is
It
not.
will meet the codes.
Oh, it will? The energy use will meet the codes?
Okay, just check. That's a building.
Okay.
One question with the height.
No,
I know
not Lee.
It's a building inspector item, but did anyone go through the academic exercise to make certain that it meets the building height requirements of the town?
I think it should be, we're in the process of going through that exercise, but
Consult with Tom DePaul on that.
we will.
Especially with your dropping slopes on the sides.
It might be,
Right.
but I can't
Yeah.
tell, I just wanted to bring it up just in case.
No, there's a formula for them.
Good. Any questions, comments that you want to raise at this point? Nope. You've got the memo, so you know what we need to do?
I've got one.
Sure.
One more real quick. Your solar panels, I've been through this last year on my house, and you can get a pretty quick education on these things. It's unfortunate. Now, this is on a flat roof, and it's not, I guess, going to be seen by anybody, not even the property owner, because are the green roofs accessible for any other reason than maintenance?
No.
No? Okay. Because there's a lot of reflective surface here, the silver color in this. And I went through the whole process of trying to pick and find the one which was just all black. Black frame, everything black, equipment, everything black, to try and diminish its impact. And even a little bit of silver will, because I had them bring one of those, and and you've seen them all over town. And the black ones are apparently less common, maybe because they're a little bit more expensive. In this particular case, I'm guessing that it really won't matter what you put up there because nobody's going to see it. I guess that's true, and if that's the case, then maybe it doesn't matter. But if this is something that you usually specify, I don't know who's specifying it, whether it be the architect. I guess I mean, not the planning board for all your other projects, but this is one of the things which I think is a concern of the community generally. I mean, you drive around this town and you see these things everywhere, and people buy a house with a nice roof line and, nice curb appeal, and then they decide to put solar up and they get this and worse, and then, well, there's a roof vent here, and there's a chimney over there, and there's a dormer here, and you get all these things all over the place. So, it's just an editorial comment on the state of the way things are, and I just ask you to take that forward.
We'll absolutely take that into consideration.
Good, thank you. Anything else, Greg, anything? Okay. If not, can we schedule them for a public hearing? Which the good news is that's toward the early part of the meetings, not during the exciting later parts.
Would you like to do that? June 10th is the deadline for July 2nd.
What do you guys think? Is that viable? And are you guys around?
We have two meetings, just so you know, we have two meetings in July, which you want to get to one of those, because then we don't meet again until September.
Yeah, yes.
Like the French.
We will push for the earlier July agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how's that schedule look, Sabrina?
That's fine.
It is, okay. Good.
Great.
So we'll see you then, earlier.
Excellent. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Sorry
much.
for the late night.
Thank you.
I apologize.
Appreciate your time.
Safe travels back, please.
Thank you.
Same company does both of them?
Okay, we move now to our next item. This is a resolution issue. This is on Lamini. Concept study for legalization of an unauthorized steep slope and wetlands disturbance, 402 Sorrel Street. I guess the tree disturbance is taken care of by Steve. That was within his jurisdiction.
So Amanda won.
Oh.
She got more votes than anybody else.
Did she know who won the other spots?
She didn't say.
What's his name?
Austin Library.
Congratulations.
Peter's a neighbor of ours.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm done. I'm Brad
It's a
Schwartz.
rare occasion, exactly. We've done this to a lawyer.
I did get a red line copy of the resolution, so I really do appreciate Jennifer providing an advanced copy and having some discussions this afternoon.
Are you
so-
okay with it? I mean-
Yes. So thank you to everybody.
Okay. We want to go through any of the changes, or any issues or questions?
I just have one question on page 4, lines 50 and 51. Did we also have another site visit that isn't referenced here that day when it was about 4 degrees below zero?
Yes, we had 2 site
The
visits.
coldest site visit on record.
And that was a joint one also with the RD.
Yeah, I think it was in winter of 2018, I think.
Yes, it was.
In fact, were there 2 in 2019? The March 30th date
One
is
about a
correct.
month ago.
Yeah,
March 30th
it might have
is
been
correct.
March 2nd, 18.
Yeah, 18.
Oh, okay. So-
I think that's correct.
Or February.
February 2nd, 18.
February 2nd, 18.
It was very cold.
Are you changing?
You're adding February.
Line 51.
We could just-
February.
We could just double check it and add that in the final.
I think it was February 2nd, 2018, not 19.
Yes.
Line 51 on page 4.
That's my mistake. I think I added those, just trying to piece it together from minutes. and-
Yep, yep. Anything else, anyone?
Nope.
So Jennifer, all set with it as is then?
Yeah, if you're good with it.
Okay. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution as amended?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No, thank you.
Thank you for listening.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, wait, I just had a question.
Sure. They're here.
It was.
It's off the
it was
record,
on- It was on Steve's memo, the thing about retaining the landscape.
Oh, yeah.
Architect the whole time through the thing.
Can't do that.
No, we can't do that.
Yeah.
It's not in the resolution, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to
It's
make
not in the
sure- That's
resolution.
what I'm clarifying. Okay.
Yes.
So we're all good.
Yep.
Just need to make Barry sweat a little bit.
Okay, we have a request for an extension of approval for Citron again, formerly Maddox subdivision. Any issues, problems with this?
Well, since Sessions isn't here, we should not do it. Right, Barry?
That's my vote. You snooze, you lose, right?
Exactly.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Any issues, do we wish to grant the approval that's been sought here by the applicant?
The extension.
Hmm?
The extension.
Yes, the extent, what did I say?
Approval.
Oh, extension.
The
Approval of the
approval of
extension.
the extension.
Yes, there you go. See?
Okay.
No
Anyway.
change in circumstances that anyone's aware of.
No comments?
They said
No
they were-
objections.
Yeah, okay, no objection, no problem.
Don't have
Okay,
any of those
motion
either.
to approve the extension request?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
We have minutes? And we have minutes for January 15. Any questions,
I have,
changes?
Page 5, line 4, I think there's a redundancy. I would suggest striking being allowed.
Say it again?
Yeah.
If you strike
Mhm.
being allowed, I think you still have the same meaning of the sentence.
Yep.
That was clearing. What is that? Okay.
It happens.
Anyone else, anything?
Yeah, I got it. I read what I said. And I have never seen such jumbled syntax in 2 paragraphs, so I have to apologize for that. And what I'd like to do with the agreement of the board, rather than sit and go through all of this, if I could just work with, send Janice what I think is the appropriate language, and have her just incorporate the minutes.
Is that allowed, Jennifer? I think I
No.
have to write what you said, not what you intended to say.
Yeah, no, the issue is that it's minutes of the board,
Yep.
right, not just one person. So we could, if you want to send Janice those revisions and the minutes can be reviewed by the board at the next meeting,
Yep.
we can do that.
Is that okay with everybody? Because it's actually incomprehensible. which is no surprise.
We all missed it.
Yeah, nothing unusual here.
We're inured to it.
Never noticed it.
Yeah, thank you. But, okay, so, but then there's a couple of other, just isolated ones that we can just take care of right now. Line 34 on page 3. Mr. Curley stated that, says one of the problems that needed to be, if you could strike one of the problems, put a solution was needed. One of the problems that a solution was needed to strike be solved in getting the audit,
Where are you, John?
line 34.
Who are you?
Right in the middle of the
3
page.
and 5.
On page,
3 and 5.
Mr. Curley stated.
Mr. Rose said one of the problems that needed to be
He said a
solved.
solution was needed to connect the auditorium building. That's what I'd like to say. So strike one of the problems that, and put in a solution was. And then strike be solved in getting the, and replace it with connect the auditorium. And then strike better connected to the site was to get it better connected to.
So can I recommend, Tom, that you edit your comments and send them to Janice, and
And
then
then
we
we'll
give you a
look at 'em
track
again.
change
Yeah,
version
yeah.
for your next
Yeah.
meeting?
Yeah, that's fine.
Well,
Maybe
Tom,
just a couple
I
more.
read that paragraph and I understood it perfectly. I don't
I
know what that
agreed to
means,
it.
but.
Well, then you all need help.
We all need help.
Okay,
You're
so
still doing
those are-
better, you're still doing better than I usually argue with my statements.
so should we move on to the February 5th?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
February 5.
I had one change. Page 14, line 49. I want to strike expressed her belief and instead put in questioned whether.
Where are you?
Page 14, line
49.
49. Strike expressed her belief that and insert questioned whether.
Anything else?
I had line 35 on the same page. Instead of property owner, we should really put in applicant. I think.
Page 837, line 37 on page 8. An applicant removes an invasive species. Could you insert before that comma? Beyond that necessary for the clearing and grading for development? Beyond that necessary for the clearing and grading for development.
Anything else?
Page 13, line 12. Ms. Curley stated that there were issues. Issues can mean anything. So I'd like to supplement improvements, that there were improvements such as the regrading the applicant's access requirement. And then on line 13, strike issues and replace it with items. And on line 55 at the end, strike issues and put impacts.
What?
Impacts.
Oh, the last word on that line.
Right.
Anything else?
Yeah, on line 48, on page 14, the lead sentence in that paragraph, there's something wrong with syntax. It's hard for me to make sense of it. So what I would like to do is, at the end of the sentence, at the end of line 48, insert
Page 13.
how most of the, and then insert lot areas in Kisco Park. Insert lot areas in. And then strike after the word park, area was, insert were. Now, most of the lot areas in Kisco Park were. And that's all.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Okay, anyone else? If not, is there a motion to adopt February 5's minutes as amended?
So moved.
All in favor, second?
Second as amended.
Yep, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And lastly, we have February 19th. Any questions, issues, changes? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes as drawn?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Is there a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you.